No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. And today I have a man who's been making waves. I'm very fascinated by him. I'm very excited to have this conversation. Mikki is in the building. How you doing, man?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. How are you? Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you. I would not interview just anybody on my birthday, but when I saw that you were available today, I was like, you know what? This is what I want to be doing on my birthday before we go to the strip club. You want to go to the strip club tonight?
Actually, I don't go to strip clubs anymore, but I'm still down to party before and after.
Really?
Yeah.
Why no strip clubs anymore?
Actually, I live a super disciplined life. I don't curse. I don't eat sugar, drink caffeine, drink, smoke, nothing. And strip clubs is one of the things that I added to my disciplines.
But you're a total pussy fiend.
It's true.
You just can't go to where they actually congregate?
Yeah, so like I used to go like back in the day. I used to go like I lived in South Florida, and like we have like Tootsie's and KOD and Rhino and all this, and I'd go every single day, and I did that for like a long time. And eventually I just saw like, I started taking those behaviors with me in the rest of my day. And I said, it's really hard to be a productive member in different relationships when I always had like this really like negative behavior connotation behind how I treat people.
Yeah, if I felt like I had any ability to go to the strip club more than like a couple times a year, then I definitely would probably have that kind of worry about that as a habit. Because I could see how you could very easily get to the point where taking in all that affection from all these girls and just blowing, whatever, 10 grand a night is probably super addictive and probably is like this really consistent thing you keep going back to, but it's like obviously very few people can afford that. And why would you really want to, like, is that really healthy for what you're building in a life,
Yeah, exactly, man. It's like, like you're just like paying for the girl's attention and affection and whatever it is.
Right.
So that all day, every day, I'm like, don't these girls know who I am? They should just be throwing pussy at me. And then I'd be offended if they weren't interested in me, like as if they have to be,
Right. Yeah, I can definitely give you some weird ideas about how life is supposed to work, just being in that environment all the time. I always think it's so fascinating when I see dudes who are, 50 years old and they got hella money and they just still have that as a part of their life. They just want to be in the strip club multiple nights a week. But I guess, some people just aren't getting necessarily the positive affirmation that other people get from their life.
I think to each their own. I think especially that last part. I think to be honest with you, like when I look at stats of like average sexual partners in a life in a year and this and that, I know that I fall on a certain side of that spectrum, and I figure if the median or the average is there, then all the power to them. Let them go pay for some pussy and whatever they got to do.
I respect it. Okay, so going back, you grew up in South Florida?
No. So I was born in Jersey, and I grew up as like a child in New Jersey. Then I lived in New York City, and then I went to South Florida, which is where I was for the last 8 years.
New York City from what age to what age?
So I lived in Jersey, near New York City. So I spent a lot of like my childhood in New York City and around New York City. I got my first official like Manhattan address. I must have been, let's see, so I was incarcerated for a lot of like early adulthood. So I'd say roughly like 20 years old. I think I got 19 or 20. I think I got my first address, and then I finally got a Florida address at like 24-ish, something in that range.
But so you were incarcerated repeatedly before that? What was going on at that time?
I spent between ages 15 and 21 almost fully incarcerated. I was just like a real like wild, push the envelope in any opportunity I could type of guy. I saw like really no bounds, and I didn't have any consciousness of consequence.
So, like, how did that play out? Like, you're a young man. Like, what were you like in high school? Maybe we should start there.
So I was always like maybe like one of the more I was just in the popular crowd, and I was kind of like one of the leaders of that crowd even. I dated like the best looking girl from any of the schools in my district. They all like won senior superlative, like, best looking and stuff like that. But I didn't do school much. I was, so I'm always a straight A student my whole life, except that I really just didn't care. So when it came to my behavior, I was expelled. I mean, I might possibly hold a record for most times expelled in my district and then welcomed back to another one of the district schools.
Really?
Went to a bunch of behavioral schools. You call the teacher by their first name, stuff like that. I even got expelled from a few of those. I got expelled from one of the most hardcore behavioral schools in the region without ever even attending it.
How?
So some of my buddies that did go to that school, I used to like break in sometimes and like smoke weed with them during class. And then finally I just got caught, just causing a scene. And they're like, you're done here.
And so what were the primary things you were getting expelled for, though?
Fighting. I used to like throw chairs at, I used to fight with my teachers a lot because I was disruptive. So they would tell me to, shush up. And I didn't like anybody talking to me in any type of way.
Right.
So I'd really, accelerate the situation, throw chairs at them. I had sex a lot in school. I actually started a trend in my high school, one of the high schools I went to. So I was in juvenile prison, and I got out the day before junior year was going to start, and it was out west. And so I flew to New Jersey to attend this first day of my junior year, and I got a hand job during art class. And for the first 2 days, they were trying to somebody had snitched, trying to figure out what had happened.
They found the cum on the ground or something?
No. So the girl jerking me off, there was another girl sitting next to me that was none too pleased with my dick being out in class.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it took 2 days to expel me, and then after that, it was like a trend in that school.
Why do you think you were acting out so much? Like, was your family life good? Your parents normal or no?
I have great parents. I was born into what was at the time an affluent family. I have a great family. My parents are still together. My dad did have a racketeering and RICO case and some organized crime, and he did go to federal prison. And at the time, I'd said, no, I've always just been wild. And looking back, I assume, that there could be some role that played in me acting out.
Right. Yeah. My dad went to prison for a year when I was in 5th, 6th grade. And looking back on it, I just see how it caused me to act out. It made me so angry. And I was kind of oblivious to that as a young man, that was the reason why I was fighting every day and couldn't behave in school and shit, as I was just deeply upset about it and upset about what it was doing to my family and all the pressure it was putting on my mom. But I didn't really, I was too young to get that that's how my brain worked.
I think that's similar to what happened with me. Yeah,
definitely. So you graduated high school?
No. I actually, while incarcerated, I taught myself. I studied and took my GED, taught myself, studied, and took my SATs, and applied to 5 colleges. Got accepted to all 5, all while incarcerated.
Wow.
But I couldn't get re-paroled in time to attend.
Okay.
But I got my GED while incarcerated.
But what was the thing that actually got you incarcerated?
I'd been incarcerated quite a few times, but it was always drugs and violence, and it was basically my whole jacket is just drugs and violence.
Right. So while you're locked up, would you describe it as a rehabilitative experience, or were you still sort of entrenched in all this bad behavior?
When I was young, going in and out of these jails, it was almost like criminology 101.
Right.
I was gaining, more connections and more understanding of how to be an adult criminal or
how
what
to
have
not get
you.
caught, what's the smart hustles to get involved with. Yeah.
Right. And then as I got a little bit older and I was still getting in trouble, I'm like, what a loser I am. How can I just still be in the same place I was as a kid, and everything that people said about me when I was young is true. And I said, I don't want to be like that.
So how are your parents reacting while you're locked up? If you come from a affluent family, they're probably really disappointed.
So, yeah, they're really disappointed. In the beginning, I was going to jail so much, it's a true story, that my mother actually became a bail bondsman to make everyone's life easier.
Wow.
Yeah. And then at some point they said, you know what, he's better off in there because at least we know he's alive and we know he's not committing more crimes or anything like that.
Right.
So they kind of just let me sit happily, They put a little bit of money on my books and just let me dry out.
And were you miserable being in there, or was it overall a good experience?
And when I was young, it was as miserable as you can get. I'm young. I have all this energy, and I'm still in high school age. You know what I mean? All my friends are seniors, and they're partying and this and that, and here I am sitting in jails and prisons. And but then when I got older, I sort of just came to terms I made a decision. Every decision I have has a consequence, good or bad. I earned my spot in this cell, and I'm gonna do my time. I'm gonna come out a better man.
Right. How bad were you with the drugs before you went in?
With drugs specifically?
Yeah, or in drinking and everything. Were you really self-destructive, or was this still kind of casual?
I was self-destructive for sure. It definitely didn't help anything. That was for sure. Never helped. But even if I took drug use or drinking off the table, let's say that wasn't even a part of my story, just my behavior in that drug-fueled lifestyle was the most destructive thing. This no bar for the law, this no regard for any consequence, and just pushing the limit all the time, being violent, guns, things like this, always.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all bad.
Yeah.
So you get out of prison and then you moved to Florida? Is that how that worked?
So that did happen, yeah. Then I moved back from Florida and I moved back to New York. I had stolen a car. My thing for a while was home invasions, and then on the way out stealing cars. So I had done this for the last time in Florida. It's been more than 7 years, for the record.
Yeah. And you were making a lot of money doing this? Would you go in people's houses? What would you get?
I mean, everything.
Really?
Anything and everything. And, it was just more than money, it was like just like access to more pockets in that lifestyle, you know? Like, let's say I came across somebody and was like, hey, does anybody know a guy with this? I was always the guy with or could be with anything at any time. So more people wanted to contact me saying, hey, can you get this for me? And just offered me more opportunities in that lifestyle.
Right. And you take the car on the way out.
So, yes, I take the car on the way out. Honestly, stealing cars is not really that profitable to be like super. It's like, I don't know if whoever knows about it. It's like really not a
great gig.
You steal
a $100,000 car. What do you do with it? You bring it to somebody who's going to give you 10 grand?
Yeah, so there's like a few options. You can get someone to do like VIN swaps. You can sell it for scrap. You can sell it and people will ship it in a crate to islands and stuff like that. But there's like no version where you're stealing a $100,000 car.
And getting 80% of that even?
Not my lawyer fees 100% of the time outweigh the money I was making.
I'm sure almost all criminals could probably say that if they were to be totally honest, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So the last thing I did in Florida at that time was home invasion, stole a car, and I had to get rid of this car. And I just needed out. The situation was so hot. I did it while the people were home. It was not technically, I don't know actually if it was home invasion, not a home invasion, but I did not like harm anybody. You know, I was just kind of in and out. Took the car, I want to get rid of the car. And so I hopped on a bus and I said, let me just, get out of here. And I didn't have anywhere to go. So I went to New York and I was kind of just homeless. And basically that's where the good stuff in my life started, was while I was homeless in New York.
So you're homeless.
Yeah.
Do you have all the face tattoos and shit at this point yet? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when did that occur? Like, when did you make that decision?
I got 2 face tattoos for the first time I ever tattooed my face. I must have been like, I was living in Manhattan. Maybe I was younger when I moved there. Maybe I was like 19 or something. And I was walking through Harlem, and you know the show Black Ink?
Yeah, the tattoo show?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I was a little bit of a figure in the tattoo world, like really, really small. I was on some shows and magazines, stuff like that. So these guys knew me, and they called me. I said, we're filming today. Do you want to get your face tattooed on TV?
Wow.
And I was like, I want to get my face tattooed anyway. So I got both my sideburns done. And then just like pretty quickly, it just kept going.
Right. Did it become an addiction? You sound like you have a really addictive personality.
I would say yeah. I'd say yeah.
The tattoo shit became an addiction. Is that how you ended up with the black arm? What was on there before that?
It was a lot of like kill cop and like gang stuff.
Gang stuff?
Yeah.
You were affiliated with an actual gang?
Yeah. For like the whole middle section of my life.
Was it like a white gang, or were you like the one white boy in it?
It was not a white gang, but it was a gang that did have like, I'd say, a lot of white members for a non-white gang.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't feel that out of it? Did you like? I feel like nowadays, like when I talk to gang members, it's either because that's where they're from, or because they have problems with certain people, so they just sort of end up like getting adopted into it. Were you part of a gang more from like a criminal angle, like you were actually doing all this crazy shit criminally?
I was. I mean, if you want to know like the real true heartedness of it, like.
Sure.
I was just so wild and just always trying to push the limits that I just wanted to feel surrounded by other guys with equal energy as me. And all these other dudes were like, we're gangsters, we're criminals, we're going to hurt people and we're going to make money to do it. Are you in or you out? And I said, yeah, sign me up.
Right. You didn't seem like the kind of guy at that point in your life who was going to say no to that kind of thing.
Exactly.
For sure. So, okay, you're homeless with a face full of fucking tattoos and you're on the run from the situation in Florida. How does this turn into a positive thing? So
I'm homeless. I've been homeless on and off in my life. In between incarcerations. And this time I'm homeless. I'm in the Heights, Washington Heights, and I was actually living in Highbridge Park. Now, what happened was there was this black dude. His name was Shorty, and he had robbed me like a few weeks prior. And I hadn't seen him since. And I finally caught him out there another time. And I was like, hey, man, how are we going to fix this? And he goes, I know you need a place to live. I got a sick setup, on top of the park. Now, over there, what happens is all the homeless, they live underneath the backside of the park, right?
Okay.
What he did, which I thought was ingenious, and this is in the wintertime, is he actually built using shipping crates, like those wooden pallets. He used those wooden pallets to build like a fort on top of the park, camouflage because it was snowing. So camouflage with a tarp and the snow on top, in between trees, right on top, which is the safest parks. That's like where families are walking their kids and stuff like that. So it was camouflage in there, and the entrance was in the backside by the wall. And he goes, "I'll let you live with me as long as you need, and we'll call it even." And I said, okay.
And how big was this actual area?
It was
as big as this carpet between us and the camera right now?
Roughly. So whatever, like, I don't know how big exactly the shipping crates are, the wooden pallets, but it was 4 pallets made out, the floor. It was 4 pallets and then just 1 pallet in height for each side. And then on top, he didn't have pallets. He had something else, I think like plywood or something, and then the tarp.
It's always pretty crazy when I'm driving down the highway and I see some of the structures the homeless people build, and I'm like, wow, like that's really fucking impressive. And I mean, I can only imagine if you were able to take that energy and put it into something that would maybe be a little more permanent. But
yeah.
So what is your life like when you're living in the park there? Like, what are you doing day by day?
Just hustling, strong arm robberies. There was like a lot of stick up boys around that area. So it wasn't like impossible to make enough money to survive one day, if you even want to call that level of living surviving.
Right. Damn. So you getting fucked up at that point as well, or are you over it by then?
Yeah, I mean, I had been done over it, but yeah, I was still using. I mean, there was like nothing else. I had like no aspirations, nothing happening in my life.
What was your go-to drug, like the one that you were ideally doing? I'm sure you were doing ones that you weren't in favor of most of the time.
I mean, I like opiates and always some blow and.
Okay, so you're really like, but man, it must be hard to afford that lifestyle when you're also living on the streets.
Yeah, except there was no bills. So, I mean, any dollar coming in can also go out.
Okay, so how does this turn better? What happens here?
So, anyway, my boy, who was from Flatbush in Brooklyn, he had lived in Florida. We knew each other in Florida, and he was doing great in life. He was also a gangster, and I got crazy stories about him, but he kept in touch with my mother and told my mother that if she somehow found me in the street and put me on a plane, he would pick me up in Florida, he would let me live in his house, and he would take care of me. So my mom agreed.
And are you talking to your mom while you're homeless during this time period? Because I'm sure you could have gone back to them, but you had too much pride, or?
Well, when I was like 13, my parents actually had to like give up their ability to raise me.
Wow.
Nothing about them. They're great parents. I have a great family. I was just way too, and they were correct. I was just way too difficult. I was not willing to let them help me. Instead, I was only destroying them.
And they knew that by 13.
Yeah. I mean, I started selling drugs. I started, using drugs when I was 11, selling drugs at 12. And I'd been already fighting. I forget, like, in school, I was, like, violent for already, like, a couple of years. And they just saw, like, no improvement by the time I was 13.
Right. Crazy. So, but you were still in communication enough that, like, your friend was having this conversation with your mom about getting you on a plane?
I don't remember exactly how I communicated with my mom. Maybe I had a phone. Maybe I would occasionally use someone's phone and try to ask her for money. I don't know exactly.
Right.
But she found me, and she stuck me on a plane, and she flew me down. And he picked me up, and this is where everything changed. When he picked me up, instead of driving me to the house or anything like that, he drove me straight to a tattoo shop, and he said, "You have no money. You offer nothing to my life, and you're only going to be a burden. So in return for your rent, you're going to scrub the toilets and mop the floors in this tattoo shop, and you're not going to get paid, but I'm going to let you live with me for free."
Right.
So I said, fine. So he had given me like $20 or something like that.
Why do you think he cared about you so much that he wanted to give you this opportunity?
I think because we were so identical and so similar that we had clicked in Florida when we first really like got to know each other on a deep level. And he just saw a younger him in me. And he's like, if I could save myself, I would. So let me save him.
Right. Damn. Okay. So what's it like staying there?
So it was pretty tight. It was cool, man. It was cool. I woke up. I would walk, all the way to the bus stop, take the bus 2 towns over. It's like $1.80 or something like that. And he gave me $20, and I'd take that bus 2 towns over. And the tattoo shop was right on the road, so that was convenient. All day I'd just sit there, mop floors, scrub toilets, take out trash, run and get food for the guys, whatever. Take the bus home, 2 towns, walk back to the house, go to sleep. And I did that like the first day, and I was like, that's great. I got no trouble today.
Right.
I did the second day. I was like, I didn't get in trouble today either. I did the third day. I was like, I didn't get in trouble today either.
And you're clean off drugs at this point as well?
Yeah, he said to me, he goes, hey, we don't party in this house. He goes, we don't drink really. We don't do drugs really. So if you want to live here, you got to abide. And I was like, yeah, man, no sweat. I was like, I'll do anything for you.
Were you like a real full-blown like drug addict where it was hard for you to get off drugs? Or were you someone who was just doing it because that was helping you deal with being on the street?
All right, so I guess you got it out of me. So I never talk about this publicly ever, but I'm a member of AA. I'm 6 years sober.
Right.
I was full-blown, fully into drugs, for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. I've actually never said that publicly at all.
But then but at what point did you actually get clean? Or
So
did you
when
take that on?
when he took me on, he said, hey, man, you got to be sober, clean
Right.
and sober. And I said, all right, bro, I'll do anything to get clean and sober and have a roof. That's like the fullest version of the story. I just usually keep my anonymity about my sobriety. But yeah, that's the full story. He's like, hey, man, if you're going to get sober, I'll help you get sober and put a roof over your head.
You got sober right then and there.
I got sober actually a little bit before that while I was still homeless. I had went into like cocaine psychosis, which I'd done like plenty of times. But when I came out of it that last time while still living in that like makeshift tent with Shorty, I just came out of it and I was like, I'm just so done.
Right.
I was like, my brain is just so burnt out. I'm just done. And I stayed for like a few weeks just not getting high anymore. I was like sober in this tent. And then my mom had connected with Charlie and said if he wants to get sober and have a place to live, fly to Florida.
So you were totally ready to do this at this point.
Yeah.
What's cocaine psychosis like? Sounds like you just go crazy from doing too much coke.
So for me, it showed itself different over the years, depending on where I was at in life. In the beginning, it was like this weird... It was more than just the paranoia of the shadow people and stuff like that. It was like this full-blown, my brain had convinced itself of narratives that didn't exist. So like if you and I were talking now, right, I would be convinced that you were not Adam 22, that this was not a podcast. I'd be convinced that you had some ulterior motive, but I couldn't figure out, for a while that's what it was. But I never knew what it was, who you really are, why we're sitting here. And I'd go absolutely absurd, maybe get violent, stuff like that, just trying to say, why won't you tell me who you are?
I mean... You definitely see homeless people on the street where it seems like they're basically going through something like that.
Yeah.
Where like they're just incapable of even following the most basic logic in a conversation because they have this like totally paranoid worldview. That's interesting. Okay. So at that point, do you have to do anything besides just not doing drugs in order to get clean? Like once you're actually at this tattoo shop and stuff, you say that you're in the program and everything. You start going to meetings right away back then?
So I didn't, which is what was really interesting. So I had been introduced to the program starting when I was 12 years old. And so I was super familiar with the concept of meetings, concepts of steps, been to tons of meetings. I understand what a sponsor is and all that. And I went like a month just living in, his name was Charlie, right? Just living in Charlie's house. Just going to this tattoo shop, not making money, but living for free. And he like said to me one time, he goes, hey, Mikki, how many meetings you been to this week? And I says, none. He goes, what step are you on? And I says, none. He says, you got a sponsor? I says, nah. And he goes, Mikki, you're going to get high. And something about that time, out of the thousands of times people have said that to me, something clicked in my head, and it was like, I'm still a loser. And I'm always going to be a loser. I'm always going to be a scumbag, and I'll never not be in jail.
Right.
If I don't fix this right now. And I remember I heard a guy in the tattoo shop use the word sober the day before. I don't know the context. So when I went into work that day, I went up to that dude whose name was also Charlie. And I says, hey, man, are you sober? And he goes, yeah. At the time, he was like sober 5 years. And I was like, I'm trying to get sober. Can you help me? And he goes, yeah, man, I could try to save your life. And I said, just tell me what to do. And I did. He told me 3 things. He said, get on your knees morning and night and pray. He said, I don't care what you pray to, just do it. He said, help one person a day in any way you can afford, whether it's carry their bags for them, open a door, pick up a cigarette butt, give $1, whatever it is. And the 3rd thing is call me once a day and tell me how you help somebody. And I said, I could do that. And I did that for a while until we started addressing the steps. Then I went through the steps, and I've been sober ever since.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't think you would have been able to stick with it if you hadn't got into the program? Like that gave you the reinforcement and the structure that you needed?
100%. So it's like my brain kept telling me that crime was okay, that using drugs and alcohol was okay, that all of these ways I acted and behaved were always okay.
Right.
So how can that same brain who's convinced all of these things are okay now teach itself how some of those things are not okay?
Right.
I need somebody else to give, hey man, you can't stop screwing up your life. Here's the proof. For 5 years, I haven't screwed up my life once. Why don't you just do what I do so you don't screw it up today?
Right. Damn. And so that helped a lot. And like everything just got better from there?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of bad things that had happened in life or in my life, but that's just life on life's terms.
Right.
But yeah, man, if I hadn't stopped drinking and drugging, then nothing else that I have in my life today could have happened or would have happened.
That's the only thing that's going to give you the clarity to be able to accomplish everything else that you're capable of accomplishing in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that for sure. Like I definitely, when I look at my productivity, like when I used to be getting fucked up like 4 nights out of the week, I mean, it was just, I was doing all right, but it wasn't great by any means. And now when I look at myself, I'm like, oh, this is actually like me optimized. Like this is me actually going as hard as I possibly can. And when you're constantly slowing yourself down with drugs and alcohol, I mean, it's really tough.
Can Can I grab a water?
Yeah, of course.
Can I take one of these?
Yeah.
It's all right?
No jumper. Wettest water in the world.
Bet. I like wet.
The best shit. Okay, so how long did you actually stay in the tattoo shop? And like, what are you thinking at that point as you're starting to like get your head clear and starting to think about like what your potential might be in life? Like, what's that thought process like?
So, when I was in this tattoo shop, I was just super stoked to be there. Even though I knew that everybody knew I wasn't getting paid, and that was okay because I knew I was safe. I knew I had a place to live, and people around me started to care about me for who I am. So at the time, I was only eating when somebody would like buy me dinner, give me leftovers. Sometimes people from the program would give me like a month's supply of ramen, and that's all I ate. And I was just so grateful for that. And I was so happy. And there was people around me that wanted to like hang out and like go to the beach and like go to the mall, go to the movies. I'm like, bro, I haven't done this stuff in, so long. This is really cool. Girls were interested in like hooking up with me.
Because you're actually like coherent and normal.
Yeah, like a normal guy.
You weren't getting a lot of crackhead pussy at one point?
Yeah, but
in the snowbank fort? Sounds romantic.
Yeah, I know. I for sure was getting pussy back then, but a way different caliber,
I would assume.
Yeah. And now it's like normal girls, like, girls that are, in their early 20s and stuff like that are like college girls are like inviting me out to the party.
They're not shrieking at themselves and talking fucking in tongues and shit. No?
Exactly. And It was way better.
What's the worst one you ever did back in the day when you're homeless and shit?
Worst thing I ever did?
The worst pussy you ever got.
Oh, bro, I don't even know, dog. I could write a book on some bad pussy.
Just once you get down to the homeless tier, it must get real gruesome, man.
I can tell you probably one of the worst stories that actually was like affected my life about pussy back then. So this chick had hit me up. I wasn't totally homeless. I was like couch surfing at the time. Mm-hmm. And this chick hit me up. I don't know. I think I had Facebook back then. We're talking like, I don't even know, like 14 years ago or something. She hits me up. She's like, hey, you're hot. I'm like, bet, you want to come over? And she goes, all right, no sweat. And she comes over. Pussy stank. We're talking, it was so bad. It was so bad that when I had the door closed, right? That the next day, somebody had walked into that room and literally goes, that stinks, right? The story gets way worse. That's the good part, right? So I get her out the next morning. Like a week later, she hits me up. She goes, hey, you want to hook up again? I said, yeah, for sure. She goes, all right, I got to find a ride. I said, no doubt. So she goes, I found a ride. I'll be right there. So I come out to greet her, to bring her in, and I look at her sitting in the car.
You smelled it outside.
No. So I look at her, and I look at the driver, and I go, hey, you're hotter than her, and I smashed her last week. Do you want to drop her off and you come back? And she goes, all right. So she drops this girl off. That girl comes back. She ends up moving in that exact same day. She never left, right? I don't know what happened. I was going to the methadone clinic at the time. So she had a car. So what I used to do is keep a girl with a car for a week because I never had take-homes. So she can drive me to the clinic every day. But on Saturday, they give me a Sunday take-home. So on Saturday, I usually kick the girl. And then come Monday morning, I find another one, right?
Okay.
But this girl just stayed for months.
And what happened to Stinky Pussy Girl? Was she salty?
I never talked to her again. Wow. I don't know. So this girl, the new girl, she ends up getting pregnant, right? And I was like, I definitely can't have a kid right now, but too late for that. So some time goes on. The baby's born. The baby's born. I'm convinced the child's mine, and my father reaches out to me, who wasn't in my life, and he goes, hey, if I'm a granddad, I just want confirmation that this is my kid. And I got offended. I'm like, whose else kid would it be,
Right.
He goes, I'll pay for the test. Don't worry about it. I want it done, and I'll financially support. And I said, I need some money, so no problem. So the kid ended up not being mine, right? So what really happened was, because that girl never left my sight from the day she came back to my house, she waited till I fell asleep one night, snuck out, banged some other dude, got pregnant by that dude, got back in bed with me before I could wake up.
Wow.
I dodged a bullet.
Women are so powerful.
Yeah.
What will they think of next? Holy shit. But about the pussy thing, though, you think like you've always like just had this preoccupation with it? And like, do you view it as like analogous with the drug thing? Like for me, like I look at like the times in my life where I was the worst with drugs, and it was also simultaneously the times when I was the worst with pussy, of like really feeling like I needed it and I had to like fuck with all these different girls and shit, and very much like breaking out of that spell is like the reason why I feel like I can just be in a steady relationship with a girl and have a kid and have a family and shit.
I don't know if it go. I don't know, because even before drug use was a problem in my life, I was still like a pussy hound. Yeah. And even post to this day, I think I have more sex now than I had at any other phase of my life.
Really?
Yeah.
How many times a day?
So if I'm not like busy traveling, between 2 and 3 different girls a day.
Really?
Yeah. Like 2 weeks ago was my birthday. And so we did for 7 days straight across, I forget how many cities. We had orgies every day, and every orgy, we had 3 to 5 orgies a day, and each one was about 15 people.
Does this get boring for you at any point or no?
Nah, it's just like living. You know, like some people, you know, when they wake up, they smoke a cigarette. I like to wake up and get my dick sucked.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can understand that. It's just like, it sounds like so much time. Like, it's just got to be a real commitment.
So what I used to do before I was banned in Vegas was they'd give me these massive villas, and then I'd also get a block of rooms, like standard rooms underneath the villa usually. And I had an assistant that would schedule all these different girls to be in different rooms at different times. So, because I don't drink or drug now, right?
Right.
So sometimes the party would get too much, and I'd be like, I kind of want some silence.
At a certain point, you don't like being around all the drugs and drinking, or do you ever get tempted?
I'm not tempted, but sometimes I just need a little break, a little me time, you know? So my assistant would schedule all these different girls who wanted to smash to go to all these different rooms at different hours. So he knew, like, okay, at this hour, Mikki's probably going to get burnt out on the party and want some alone time. So I'd go downstairs to, like, call it room number 1, and there'd be a girl in there. We'd smash. Then I'd go to room number 2, smash, 3, smash, 4, smash, 5, smash, and I'd go back to the party for an hour. And in that hour, my assistant had 5 different girls who wanted to hook up, go into those rooms. So I can rotate, like, an hour on, hour off.
A lot of people watching this would probably be kind of confused about how there could possibly be this many women who would want to have sex with you. It almost seems like a crazy question to ask, but how are you even like, I mean, yeah, it sounds easy. Like, oh, of course you could get 5 girls to wait in these individual layers under the hotel, like to have sex with you. Sure. Why not? Like, how are you pulling this off?
Like I said, I always was like, you know, pretty good with women. I don't know what they really see in me, or at least saw in me, especially when I was young. But now I think what it is I think that because I'm accessible to a certain level of female, that they see themselves, well, if they have access to me, what I offer, like I can offer them a platform in life that they never otherwise would have received.
Financially or what?
Not that I pay. No. It's like, well, for example, I do foot the bill for everything, right? So they get to go to these rooms that are like, they cost like $100,000 a night, right? And they see me get to spend $1 million that week because I just like to have a good time. So if there's people around me that I'm having a good time with, when I spend that, call it $1 million that week, they also have some of it spent on them. But I will say this, I make incredible real connections. It's not necessarily...
That's what I noticed about you, is when I saw you talking to the porn star girls when we were at this poker game the other day, a lot of times I feel like the problem with me is that I can connect to the girls on the topic of like business. I could talk to them about, you know, what we're going to do to make money together in the future. But I don't ever really feel like the girl is under the impression that we're connecting in many ways. You felt like you're actually connected with them. There was one girl there who was super hot. She seemed like she was like talking to you in a way where I was like, oh, he's fucking her. And then I'm pretty sure I also just saw her try to call you during this podcast. And I mean, she's a pretty hot, famous porn star. So I mean, I don't know. What you talk about the connections that you think you can establish?
I'm super. I don't want to sound like egotistical. I want to say this with all humility, but I'm super like genuine, right? There's like a lot of things that I can't do in life that I'm not good at or whatever, and I'm super open about it. So if someone approaches me with something, I say, hey man, like I'm really sorry, or to a girl, like, hey, I'm really sorry, but that's not my area of expertise, but I know a guy. Why don't I connect you? And if you need any help, let me know. And I offer support, and I think they just really appreciate that. I never tell a lie, and you can ask my friends on a real core level. I can't lie. Do I sometimes catch myself maybe embellishing or manipulating? This, yeah, I would say, but lie I don't do, and I think I just keep it a buck all the time. And even though whatever fame or clout I have is direct, it's let's just say like I got famous off how rich I am, right? So I think when people see how I actually live and meet me and see like, bro, this dude wears the same pair of ripped sweatpants every single day. Like, what's up with that? And they just are really curious. Hey, man, like, you don't fit the bill of somebody that, you know, is that status. Why? And I said, well, man, this is just me, man. I used to be homeless and now I'm living life.
How much do you think the money factors into that? Because I was thinking that when we were sitting there at the poker table, like everybody at that table if you could play poker with, you know, $20,000 or $40,000 in front of you, and you had like hundreds of thousands of dollars stacked in front of you, then certainly like the average woman's going to see that and think, oh, fuck, they must be a millionaire. They must have a lot of money if they can sit there with 20K in front of them to play this game. Do you feel like women are like how much does that change how women interact with you? Because I'm not really used to it, because it's like, yes, I am in that financial position now, but I've been in a relationship pretty much the whole way that I've been like getting to that point. And I'm not really like, I don't put myself in a situation where I get to like see how much more girls are attracted to me because of the money thing. Like, how much does that factor in?
So when I decompartmentalize my level of relationship with different women, I can accept women that are attracted to me because they think, oh, look how rich this guy is, right? And when I know that's what I'm getting myself into, no sweat, let's jive. That's where we're at, and that's all we're gonna be, no doubt. You know, you want me to floss a little and you wanna, you know, hook up, no doubt.
Right.
And I think what happens is, in a lot of scenarios that I'm in, where it's like, for example, poker games, especially like private games, those girls are there for money. I have money. And compared to the other guys with money, I'm young. I look like I should be a SoundCloud rapper. And I do really fun things. I'm not like some old, hairy, sweaty, fat dude with a small dick. You know?
I get that. I remember I had this like really eye-opening experience when I was young. I was maybe 28, and I went to the strip club with my friend in Austin. And he was like, you know, another like relatively young like guy with tattoos and everything. And we were in the strip club, and like, I was like, we kept going like every Friday to do brunch and then just like hang out for a while and stuff. And I was talking to him one day. I'm like, how do you like just go in there and have so much fucking confidence with these girls? Like, I was still stuck in the mind state of like, oh, I should be lucky to even have one of these strippers even fucking talk to me, you know? And he said to me, he's like, bro, when we go in there, everybody in that fucking strip club in the middle of the day is either wearing a suit or they're a fucking day laborer. Me and you walk in there and we got tattoos, we ride bikes, we have like we go out, we party, we do drugs. We like, these girls are like on our time. Like, they're like you. Don't go in there and act like they wouldn't want to hang out with you. Why wouldn't they want to hang out with you? You're way more interesting and appealing to these girls than 95% of the people that go into that strip club. And I was like, fuck, you're right. And I've pretty much always kept that in mind, and that's pretty much colored like every interaction I had with a girl for the rest of my life, which is like, I'm not going to enter into this conversation as if I should be lucky to be having a conversation with you. If anything, I'm going to look at you like you have to earn my fucking trust and appreciation, right?
They're lucky to be that you invited them into your life.
Right. Yeah. And you have to frame it that way. Maybe that's not always actually true. Maybe she's way cooler than you and has a better life than you in some way, but I think it bodes well for you to approach it as if you have something to offer that they should want from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I also do really well with rejection, and I think I'm just kind of like a fun-loving guy a little bit, especially around women, that, like, let's say there's 10 girls in a day that I would be willing to, like, go flirt with. It's okay if half of them reject me. I still got 5 girls that day.
You have to have that sense of self that is immune to a lot of girls not being interested in you, you know? Yeah. But also, it's like you have to put yourself out there in, like, a fun enough way that it never feels like they have to, like, make or break this decision of, like, do I want to fuck them or not? It's like, you could fuck me, or we could just be cool. Yeah, those should be the 2 options.
Yeah, exactly, you know? Exactly. And there's no other option to that. There's no alternative.
Exactly. Because as soon as it becomes, you could fuck me, or fuck you, bitch, get the hell out of here, you're not allowed at this party, that's bad. But if it's like, you don't want to fuck me, okay, like I don't care, like it doesn't matter. That's like a good proposition that you're setting up there.
Exactly. And if you had that, like bang me or like get out of this party type energy, bro, it makes you like a predator. It makes you like a dickhead. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's just, that girl could be cool and just maybe just not be interested, or maybe she's in like a different relationship, something like that. You can still be friends. The girl could be mad dope.
And that's what you get from hanging out with a lot of porn stars too, is that you get to be consistently around women who don't have this thing built into their head that is this like shame thing with sex, you know? It's like hard for like normal people to understand that if you're hanging out with 20 porn star girls, they just don't have that same like sex is bad thing built into their brain that normal girls do. Like when you hear, this was me throughout so much of my life, but now I'm going to talk about this kind of guy. Like I'm not that kind of guy anymore. But when you hear dudes talk about like, oh, this girl and she fucked 12 of the homies and she fucked me and she fucked these 5 other dudes and yada yada, and I'm like thinking about that from a porn perspective, it's like, who the fuck cares? Like, that's just right. Of course, everybody's gonna fuck each other. Like, you know, but like that seems like such a big deal when you're young and you think of sex as this shameful thing. And a girl who's fucked 50 dudes is a girl who's 50 times more shameful than the average girl, or whatever the hell we were telling ourselves when we were young.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you feel like you're ever gonna like want to change when it comes to the sex thing? Like, I mean, you got to view like a long-term relationship as something that would be kind of attractive in a way, right?
Oh, 100%, 100%. The thing is, I'm a real sexual deviant and a pervert in a non-predatory way, right? Shout out Jim Norton for explaining that one.
Okay.
And so, you know, I'm always like sex-driven, and I love sex. It's like a really pure, fun activity. So I think more likely what's going to happen, which has had happened my whole adulthood, is that any woman who wants to be like in a real relationship with me, like claim me as their boyfriend or whatever, understands like, hey, rather than us find ourselves in a predicament or I'm at a crossroads where I may in a weak time break our trust, right, and cheat, I think you need to understand that I need some leeway here to go kind of do my thing and get my rocks off and come to terms with that female, like what is appropriate, what is comfortable for both parties, where we can both be our truest selves and not hurt each other.
Yeah, and I mean, have you ever had like a girlfriend where you like fucked girls together?
Oh, for sure.
Such a great feeling. Like I don't, a lot of people don't get it, but it's like that bonding experience of you being able to enjoy somebody else together. If anything, back in the day when we were doing it more like not for the camera, now it's mostly like for OnlyFans and stuff. But that, I felt like that shit brought me and my girl together a lot.
Yeah, I know you and your girl have a really dope relationship in that department, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like that was always like some of the best times when I think about us like really feeling close.
Yeah.
In some girl's pussy together.
And you know what's cool too about it is like both like my girl and I, right, which has always happened, they would look at together with me at a girl and be like, wow, she's very attractive, right? And you couldn't deny it. Like, this girl's a bombshell. And if she was interested in either or both me and my girl, then both of us together are like, whoa, we just got to bang this smokestack, you know? And it was like a cool thing. We can like high five each other about
Smoke show or smoke stack is the word now?
I don't know.
I don't know what the kids show, but this is stack now. That's good.
I don't know what the kids are saying these days.
The show, yeah. No, and I mean it's crazy to me to like when people like get into relationships long term, and like I know a lot of guys like this where they pretty much they get into a relationship, they can never ever acknowledge that a girl's attractive ever again. You have to hide that. Just the mere fact that you're a man, you have to hide like that you're attracted to women.
Like girls who get mad at their dudes for looking at photos of girls on Instagram or double tap and stuff like that.
Right.
I don't know. I couldn't live like that. It's like living in a prison.
I know people who got divorced because they like found out that the dude was looking at porn. This is more like back in the day, but still.
No, not for me.
Isn't that crazy?
I'm really, really happy that that man can now find his freedom again.
Yeah, I'm glad that's not like the standard for most relationships, I would think. Do you watch a lot of porn? Or?
I watch a lot of porn.
Okay.
Yeah, I love jerking off. I do have a lot of sex.
How many nuts you bust in a day, dude? This sounds punishing.
So when I do like, sometimes I'll do like 10 or 15 girls in a day, right? When I say in a day, I just mean like a 24-hour period. Because I go, like when I'm partying, sometimes I won't sleep for a couple days. And when I do that, I only nut like 3 times.
Really?
But I usually tell the girl going into it, like, hey, I know you want to smash. I'm down to smash. You know, I'll give you the dick. But I cannot finish because I have to see someone right after you, you know? Because if I nut, let's say I got 5 girls in a row, and I nut the first girl, the other 4 are kind of toast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how much nut are you really supposed to create in a day?
Yeah.
There might be more to life than this. Reducing as much rope as you possibly can. Fuck. Okay, but we got to go back to the root of all this. So, okay, the tattoo shop, everything's going good, etc. Like where do you go from there? Because at some point in all this, you end up opening a fucking chain of rehabs.
Yeah. So while I'm working this tattoo shop, some time goes on, and on my day off, Charlie's landlord, who to this day is one of my closest friends. Actually, I just had him out in Vegas last weekend. He comes home. This is the first time he and I ever met. And he just, he looks at the house, the landlord, he leaves the house, and he calls Charlie. We're standing next to each other, and he goes, hey, what's that kid doing right now? And Charlie goes, he's doing nothing. And then he looks, he goes, you want to make $100 for a half day's worth of work? And I said, yeah, bro, it's be the first $100 I made in a long time. Uh-huh. He goes, I need you to paint a house. This is in Florida in the summer. It's really hot. I said, bro, I'll do anything, like no sweat. And I paint the house. He gave me $100 cash. Took a few hours. He goes, you want to paint another house tomorrow? I'll pay you another $100. I says, yeah. And this goes on for a while. What ended up happening was I worked really, really hard. I was just a day laborer, but it was just me and this dude, Sean. And now that I worked hard and I learned whatever I learned from Sean, he can take new jobs and leave me behind. So he's getting double the work. He's still only paying me $100 a day. So he's all this extra money. He buys himself a new work truck and he gives me the old work van, which is like one of those rate vans, no windows, none of that. Right. And he goes, this is yours now. So now you can never be late to work and all this. I drove that van. It was my first car, like, as an adult. I drove that thing everywhere, bro. This is when I was going to strip club. Drove it to the club every night, took girls on dates in that thing. Me and my boys would like push the dirt back, put lawn chairs in there, and like we'd all just cruise out in that thing. And anyway, so he ended up taking a contract for this rehab company that had all these sober livings. So we were like fixing up all the buildings for all the sober livings. When the job came to an end and we finished all the work, they saw that I was out of work. They saw that I'm bettering my life. And they came to me and they says, hey, do you want a job in-house? I says, I don't know what y'all doing there. They said, if you work just half as hard inside as you did outside, you'll be fine. I said, okay. So I took the job. I saw these kids, similar path in life as me, probably dumber than me, which is kind of a hard feat, you know. And these kids are driving brand new Beamers and Benzes and Maseratis. And I'm like, what's happening, right? So I sat really quiet and I stayed in my lane and I just kept observing and observing and observing. And I figured out what they were doing, what job description they had, what their duties and what their roles were. And so I started doing it and I didn't ask for any extra money, right? I started doing what they were doing where I should have been paid enough to go buy a new Beamer or Benz or whatever.
What kind of stuff were they doing to make money?
So they were doing all types of business development, helping with expansion, helping cut corners, helping, let's say, for example, let's say that the rehab was expanding and they needed more chairs, right? These guys would go find chairs to help help put the chairs in the building.
Right.
So the owners were busy doing whatever they were doing. They just needed someone to do these things. And these guys were doing everything. They were kind of like the glue that held it together. So I started doing all those same things, however I could, with whatever limited resource I had, and not ask for more money. Eventually, when I realized I know what I'm doing now, I go to another rehab and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is how much I'm getting paid. Can you beat it? They says, yeah, I could beat it. I then immediately go back to my original company and say, hey, man, I got offered to do the same amount of work, this much money. Can you match it? They say, yeah, we can match that.
And what kind of salary are we talking about around this time?
I started at like $12 an hour.
Okay.
Then somebody would offer me like 18. I'd go back to the first company and say, hey, man, can you give me a raise? Just match it to 18. They say, yeah. That same exact day, I'd now go to a totally different rehab and say, hey, man, this is all the work I'm doing. I'm getting paid $18 an hour. Can you beat it? They'd be like, yeah, we'll give you 22. I'm like, all right, the same day I'll go back to the first company. I'd be like, hey guys, super crazy. Another company offered me $22. Can you match it?
Did you end up at the original spot or the other one?
So, well, I would keep staying with the original until finally they were like, we're not going to match that pay, right? And I'd be like, no sweat, because I already secured the deal at the last place I saw before that. So then I go to them and I say, hey guys, I'm going to take the job. The same day they hire me, I go to another rehab that I haven't been to yet and say, hey man, I'm now getting paid, $1,000, $52,000 a year to do this. Can you beat it? They're like, yeah, we'll give you 72. And I spent the next couple of years leveraging my position. But every time I did switch companies, I would just say, what's the guy making more than me doing? And I'd follow that same pattern. I learned what he did, didn't ask for more money, and I just did it to be the best employee ever. And when I finally mastered that new area of the business, I'd go to a totally unrelated rehab and try to keep leveraging my position and my pay until eventually they're paying me like $500,000 a year. And essentially, I'm doing the same amount of energy and effort I was doing for $12 an hour, but I'm getting $500,000 a year in salary. Right?
Wow.
When I started making that much, and I knew it wasn't even that, in the grand scheme of things, I was like, basically just the other day homeless, right? Looking back, I was really good at saving money. I knew how to eat ramen for all 3 meals a day.
You were still doing that even when you were making hella money?
Not exactly, but I wasn't like lavishly balling out of control.
You knew the value of saving at the time,
yeah. I hadn't like been introduced to this having my own money and balling yet. Like I hadn't been introduced to that lifestyle. The money came before the lifestyle came. So I was really good at saving. So then I started opening up my own, and one thing led to another. Once I opened some, then I became, when I was in a business meeting, I was no longer like a kid working in a rehab, right? I was the owner of a medical provider. Right. So now the business meetings didn't consist of other kids working in rehab. It consisted of other medical provider owners, guys who own hospitals, clinical laboratories, pharmacies, guys who owned brain surgeons, back surgeons, whatever it may be. And all of us have a common purpose. What are we billing for? Can we bill for that? How do we have a lower CPA, and how do we get more patients, right?
Right.
So now together we're all in meetings, and these guys gave me mutual respect despite having tattoos on my face, despite being so much younger than them. They said, he earned a seat at this table. He must know what's good. And one thing led to another. I ended up owning 300 pharmacies, a few clinical laboratories, drug rehabs.
How do you go from there to I feel like you just skipped some steps. So you're becoming this guy who's getting paid a lot to help run a series of rehabs that's owned by somebody else. And then at a certain point, do you just have enough of your own capital? You get an investor, or you're just boom, I'm going to open my own. And how do you go from rehabs to pharmacies?
Yeah. Okay. So the exact chain of events was now I have enough money because I'm getting paid so much that I can do my own thing. I don't need to be getting paid by someone who's making more, right? I'm doing all the same work. And because I worked so hard, I mean, I was working 16 to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week for all these years. No family, no holidays, no vacations, no birthdays, no day off. I used to sleep. I had at one time 4 phones, and I used to sleep with my I had one phone that had limited phone numbers in it. So if it was really important, this phone rings, right? And I used to sleep. I'd put the phone on the pillow and my face on this. So I'd sleep like this. So if it ever text message, email, or phone call, immediately I wake up and I can do business in the few hours that I slept every day.
That's no way to live. You got to respect your sleep, right?
But I did that for a lot of years,
But it was that kind of business where you needed to be able to give somebody a response any time?
Yeah, man. I mean, I was just so hungry. I was just always scared of being homeless again that I was like, I'll do anything to keep the business flowing. And how do I be the best, the fastest?
Right.
So this way, if any opportunity ever came, I'm the first to jump on it. So in these industries, in the healthcare, what happens is one offer will be sent out to, 10 affiliates. And the first one to give the best response wins and gets the deal. So I was always the first one, and I was always willing to work harder, be better, and do it for less because I was just always scared of being homeless. And to me, any money was good money at that point. Even though I know it looks like I'm making a lot, but I still was this kid who was barely not homeless.
Right. You still had that scarcity mindset where you were it sounds like you basically took the same mindset to working that you had previously applied to drugs, or that you currently seem to be applying to sex.
Right, exactly.
You basically you find something that you just want to optimize and just go as hard as possible with.
As hard as possible, yeah. I wanted to be the best and the fastest. I felt that I always had this, and I still do have this weird panic in my head that says, look at all these years I wasted partying, drinking, drugging, and being incarcerated, where all my friends and high school girlfriends are excelling in life, and here I am homeless and still a loser.
Right.
So I felt I was playing catch up. So I always wanted to go fast and go hard.
Definitely. So you open a series of rehabs. How do you actually go about doing that, and how do you actually find the customers?
So that was one of the things I was doing was patient acquisition, right? So I did a lot of marketing in any way I could. I was always kind of creative and thought outside the box. So when it came to patient acquisition and marketing, where the standard route would be, for example, run a billboard, right? What I said to myself was, which is this is a true part of my story, is I actually worked on Wall Street while homeless when I was even younger, and I still had face tattoos. And while working on Wall Street, I worked at Wallace Morgan at 60 Exchange Place, and no shout out to them because they ended up robbing me blind, right? I don't care what. You can put it on the air, you can bleep it, I don't care what, but they can all suck my dick. My first day training, I broke national firm records, and my third day training, I broke international firm records. And I went on and on and on, and they ended up never paying me $1 because I did it all under my team leader's account because I didn't have any ability to put it under my name, right? And I was only training. They might not even have hired me.
How'd you get so good at that?
I don't know. I've always been good in sales and really personable, and kind of goes back to the female thing, why are girls attracted to me? And I think I'm just really able to engage and connect on an intimate level, not even sexually speaking, just with people. And I think that it just rolled into sales really easily. I was really easy able to suss out and vet out who it was that I was pitching to, and immediately first I do work hard. I did do some due diligence, so I would be like, this is the guy's name, this is everything about his family, whatever I can find on him. Now, what here can I relate to, or what can I offer him? Right?
Is the rehab business kind of predatory in a sense?
It's incredibly predatory. I want to say 90%.
Because you need people who are addicted to drugs in order for the business to flourish.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of fraud and a lot of intentionally causing people harm to financially gain off it. And I don't stand for any of that. I think it's super uncool, man. It's super uncool. It's super
Really?
uncool.
So you never got into any shady stuff? Like, because if you're really concerned with profit maximizing, I'm sure there's tons of temptation to cut corners and offer shitty service, etc.
So there was a lot of crossroads I had to make more money and do things a different way and easier, or I can do things the hard way, make less money, but I felt better about it. Now, this was the thing. I was a really big active member in the AA community in that region. I mean, my reach was really far in the program. And all of these people who don't even know what I do for a living because that's not relevant in our relationship, right? They just want help from me every day. And I started to have to say to myself, imagine these guys knew. This is how, when I want to make a decision, what I do now with a sober mind is I say to myself, when I introduce myself to a stranger and I put this headliner, hey, I'm Mikki and I abuse people's addiction for money, how do I feel about it, right? Or, hey, I'm Mikki and, I do, and I sell drugs, but I'm sober, for example. How would I feel about it? And if I don't feel right about introducing myself that way, then I can't engage in it. So when all these young men, and not even always young, were contacting me like, hey, man, I need help getting sober, I always thought to myself, how would I feel if I responded with, I'll help you get sober as long as I could profit off it? And I said, that's not cool. So I was at many crossroads where I had to do that. But ultimately, I just stuck on what I was doing. And I just kept moving on as fast as I could.
So you felt like there was a way for you to do this honestly without having to feel bad about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. But there were still some times where I had to question my morals or my ethics. And there were definitely times where I bent them or maybe even broke them fully. But bro, the feeling is so heavy and so paining in my heart that I was like, this is really gross.
But I mean, that's always going to happen to you really when you are running a business at the end of the day. Like most businesses, if I open the most harmless sounding thing, if I open a fucking fried chicken restaurant, I mean, yeah, I'm poisoning the community, but I'm also giving them what they want in exchange. I'm giving them a service in exchange for an amount of money that I basically think is fair. I mean, you could really look at anything like that, but then there's certain decisions that would just clearly shift you into the abusive piece of shit category, right?
I'll tell you, evidence-based, how I can show that I was always on the right side of morals and ethics. When I first started in the industry, there was little to no regulation, right? Or at least crackdown. There was no eyes, there was no skepticism. It was just open range, do what you want. And as the years went on that I was still in the industry, it couldn't have been a more tighter, watched by federal agencies industry.
Yeah, it's so easy to defraud, use it as basically a way to scam.
100%, and people are dying while you're frauding them, right? So there was so many reasons for the FBI and the feds to be having their eyes on this industry.
So even if it wasn't a moral decision, it would have also been a practical decision because you're scared that you're going to get fucking fried if you did anything fucked up.
If it wasn't a moral thing, then at the very least, I was really nervous that I'd go to jail, right? Federal prison. Yeah.
So how do you end up opening pharmacies? That seems kind of a very different branch of that business, and also seems like the kind of business that a large percentage of people were basically doing really toxic shit under the guise of it around that time, at least.
So this was sort of what had happened. When I'm in these meetings now as the owner of a medical provider, talking to other owners of other medical providers, right? And we're all talking to each other hey, how are you maximizing? Hey, have you heard about this new option we have through commercial insurance or state insurance, et cetera, right? As these things are going on, we're in these meetings, I started hatching little ideas here or there. Now, what I did was, because I have a sales background and worked on Wall Street and all that, I had two business partners that also came from the sales world. One of them used to be an employee of mine. He actually was murdered 4 months ago, totally unrelated. He was this punk kid that came from Baltimore City. He came to Florida to get sober also, and I met him. He was holding a sign at a pawn shop that says enter here, And that was the first time we met, and we had a conversation. Long story short, we became friends, and he wanted to work for me. And I gave him silly jobs just to help this kid put some money in his pocket. He was such a good guy. He worked so hard. He was the best employee I ever had to date, right? And he became my best friend, my brother, that he no longer was an employee anymore. I was like, hey man, do you want equity in this thing? Do you want to be a partner? I want you to earn every dollar for your work. And he was so grateful. So me, him, and a third guy. Now what happened with that third guy was that my buddy, whose name was Rizzo and this third guy already had a little deal hatching. And Rizzo, being such a good guy, goes, I can't do anything without Rusty being involved, right? He goes, I'm really sorry, but I can't be a partner or own anything without him. I said, well, let me meet this guy. And I met him, and he was like, he was the tits, man. He's like, this is what I do, this is what I don't do, this is what I'm really good at, and this is what definitely you need somebody else for. And I said, you fit the bill for what I'm bad at. Let's do it. So the three of us partnered. And what we did was we opened up a think tank, like in the downtown area in Florida on the beach. And this think tank, what happened was when you walked in, we were on like the 11th floor of this tall building. And when you walk into our office, what was supposed to be like the lobby Sally Port area, we turned into the three of our shared office, right? So it's a little cramped space, but the three of us had our head desks there. Now, all the other rooms in the office, we just outfitted with computers, headsets, phones, dialing systems, whatever we could. And the three of us would sit there all day, right? Because we could run whatever business I had remotely for the most part. And we'd sit there with all our other hours and just start pitching ideas to each other. Hey, have you heard about selling dildos? And I'd be like, no, but I know a lot of, porn stars, right? He goes, well, I know a guy who makes the molding for such and such porn company, and he'll just give it to us for less than they're paying, and we can white label it. And I'm like, all right, let's see if we have a market for that, right? Then Rizzo would come in and be like, hey, man, I just bought 100 million pieces of consumer data. Why don't we fish through it for every female in every rural area between ages 18 and 24, because they're probably the horniest and need sex toys, right? And so we'd feed through all these, let's say it's 100 million pieces of consumer data until we vetted out just the perfect demographic. And then we'd take a couple guys trying to get sober that need a job, be like, hey man, we'll pay you, $50, $100, whatever. Why don't you just sit on this phone, put this headset on, and every time it rings, just read this pitch here that I wrote, right? And let's spend a week or a month or however long it takes seeing how many dildos can we possibly sell, right?
So dildos actually happen.
Dildos we turned down actually, but for example, the dildos we decided was not in our best interest. It was more work than it was worth, and it was just too many components to where the margin became too slim at the amount we were projected to sell.
So you're still doing the rehab thing and everything, and then you're also doing all this brainstorming on top of it, because that's one thing that I always notice with myself is that the better that my core business is doing, a lot of times that kind of fucks me up in terms of thinking about what the future opportunities are, because I'm so down in the trenches. If I'm doing 10 podcasts in a week, it's very, very hard for me to then also have enough room for me to be thinking of, well, the NFT shit is taking off. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do this, and this. It's very hard to be grinding one business and then also growing other businesses at the same time.
So what me, Rizzo, and Rusty realized really quick was we have to be very, very stringent with our cutoff policy, right? As soon as we said to ourselves, this is now taking from our primary source of income, which we always said bread and butter was our private healthcare industry, right? As soon as we saw, for example, the dildo situation taking more time than it was worth, because the money we're making for the same amount of time is less in dildo selling than it is in private healthcare, immediately we cut it off. We cannot jeopardize our bread and butter, which is the only way we're supporting our think tank, right? So we had other ideas. I mean, we went through so many ideas in this think tank that there's no way I could remember them all.
And none of it was about something you were already passionate about. It was all just let's make money. And what was your goal at that point financially? Because you probably already had millions, I'm assuming.
I was doing well. Yes, I was doing definitely well. I did have a goal in mind, but it wasn't a life goal. What it was per vertical, right? So per business or per industry, per LLC, how much I want to make at what points in my life before I can say I've done it in this one, right? Okay. And so through this think tank, we came up with so many ideas, and some were so fruitful that it would actually make an average person sick. And some cost us so much money that it still to this day makes me sick, right? But our cutoff policy was really firm, and that helped so much damage control to help stay with the fruitful endeavors. Now, when it came to the pharmacies and the clinical laboratories, and I also had one of America's biggest telehealths and all these things, although I know it sounds like it's all in private healthcare, they're all separate verticals. So these ideas would be stemming from the meetings I have with guys who own hospitals and pharmacy, stuff like that, hearing words they're saying, because I was always really quiet, and I just I knew that these guys were smarter, and thank God for that, because if I was the smartest in the room, we all would have been living in a box in Washington Heights, right? So as I'm listening to these guys talk, and then going to this think tank and just pitching to my buddies, hey, what do you think about exploring this topic here? These guys, my two buddies, my partners, they offered me so much information that we said, let's try it our way. And sometimes our way was better than almost any other way ever done before. And so we just kept falling. I don't want to say kept falling, but we had roughly 5 businesses that each independently would have made any man wealthy.
So you just kept doing this, and then at what point do you decide, like, okay, I've had enough? Or how many years are you spending building all these things out?
So it was about half a decade of working the 7 days a week, 16, 18 hours a day lifestyle, right? And what happened at the end of this was Rizzo and I had, in our personal relationship, some falling outs. And he was sober, but he stopped working a program, right? So his behavior became like really erratic, difficult, challenging, vindictive, spiteful, and he had a lot of ulterior motives that were really ill-intended and unhealthy. And it went from our personal relationship having these issues to now spilling into our workday, because we're sitting together out of those 16, 18 hours a day, at least 12 of those hours we're sitting together in this tiny room working on ideas. And so I was the sole financer of every single thing we did, except there were times where I was too thin on money and one of these guys would kick in cash, right? And I don't want to in any way take away from the lengths these guys went to put in some money sometimes, but ultimately my role in our 3-way partnership was I was the sole financer.
Right.
Well, that wasn't our agreement when we locked in together, right? We were all getting paid the same, so we should all pay the same. It just happened that way, and I think it's because I was always the best with money, best with finances. I'm really good at numbers. I'm good at accounting, and I was just very anal about that stuff. So I think it was really easy for me to know how much can I allocate to this or what have you. So at some point, our most profitable business, we had an affiliate that I just couldn't stand him. I wanted to wring this guy's neck. So every time he called me, I would pass the phone to Rusty. Now, the thing with Rusty is he's the worst businessman you'll ever meet, but he's one of the greatest people and one of the smartest computer minds. So he'll make every wrong decision in a business meeting that you can make. If there was this is what I used to say. If there's a multiple choice test and it was like, which answer of these is the best? And they always throw one in there that's like clearly wrong just to help you get the right answer. He's going to pick the clearly wrong one with the purest of heart, and I don't know why. So on one of these calls in our most fruitful business with our number one important affiliate, he changed the terms of the deal without me being there. And the terms of the deal were so bad for my company that it would have easily bankrupted us in 1 week. Whoa. But he already locked these terms in, and it was like a crisis that he had did this. So I said, guys, the only way we're going to survive this is if we kick in X amount of money to float us until this thing works itself out and I could restructure. And they kind of laughed it off, thinking that, as per usual, I was going to foot the whole bill. Well, the morning of our deadline came, and I texted. It was like 10 a.m. I didn't go into the office that day, and I texted both of them in our work chat. I said, guys, this is how much is owed. I have my share of it right here. You guys need to figure out how the rest of this money is going to be deposited. Now, Bank of America shuts down at 4 p.m. So our deadline for that day, which was the deadline day, was 4 p.m. I said, you guys let me know when you deposit your guys' checks into the account, and I'll deposit mine, and business continues. And they said, what if we don't? And I said, if you don't, I'm going to pay it in full, and I'm going to be the rightful owner of this full company. And they did sign contracts. I wrote the contracts, and I structured the contracts to exactly say that if anybody were to default on any cash calls, that immediately their shares would be diluted to the other parties. Well, so my office, we had a lot of offices, and the office I was in by the end of that day was immediately across from a BOA. And so I pull into the BOA parking lot with 2 checks, one for my 1/3 and one for the whole lot, right? And I sit there, it's like 3:50 p.m., and I text in the chat, and I said, guys, did you deposit your checks? Time's out. And they both said, nah, I think you should just pay. So I didn't text back. I walked into the bank, I deposited the check. The time it took me to drive from that office to the other office was about 20 minutes. I called every single affiliate company that we were doing business with, and every single one of them was a 1-call close. I said, guys, Rusty and Rizzo are no longer points of contacts. We're going different directions. By the end of tomorrow, I'll have my new point of contacts address you. Please bring all your business directly to me. I'm no longer with the other 2 guys. Every single affiliate, 1-call close. They all said yes. I arrived at the other office where Rizzo and Rusty were. And I said, guys, I'm sorry, but you're out of this business. You're in the other ones, but you're out of this one, you know? And it was almost like they broke. They couldn't take it. And what ended up happening was I bought them out of every company we had together. It took like 3 months. and I bought the full everything of all of our companies. So now I'm having 2/3 more income. So I got 3x on my income, right? And not just that, but what I realized was happening was I no longer have to run anything by these guys. I no longer have to ask their opinions. I no longer have to care about their feelings.
Why would you even want to work with them at that point? Couldn't you just bail out?
Well, yeah, except that I didn't want to give up all of these businesses. These were the kind of large companies. Yeah. So I bought them out of everything. And now that I'm not just making 3x the money, but I don't have to run anything by them, I figured out that my way was the right way. When I adjusted all of my company's policies, procedures, and how we're going to handle business, we grew like 5x in like the next 90 days, which was really, really incredible. And it only took like, I don't even know, like 9 months for me to incredibly surpass all of my projections for each vertical, where I would have said to myself, I'm good, I'm on to the next thing. And I had, all of a sudden, I had such great income and just such, I mean, I just had so much money at this point that I was like, I'm done working 18 hours a day. I'm done not knowing what birthdays look like. I'm done not knowing what traveling looks like. I'm done with this.
You were so busy that you felt like you couldn't even take a day off for your birthday?
No. So what I used to do is...
Look at me. I'm here on my birthday.
What I used to do is tell everyone my birthday was Halloween, because my birthday is right about Halloween. So what happens is everybody gets so self-consumed with their own Halloween plans, they forgot that my birthday even might be Halloween. Right. And they forget to say happy birthday. They forget to try to celebrate because they're self-consumed. So I get a freebie on my birthday every single year where I can just keep working.
That's smart. My birthday is like basically on Thanksgiving. So I usually try to like kind of consolidate the I have to go see family and all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm just gonna make it one thing. And my kid was born 10 days before me, so now I have like, I can just kind of put the attention on her and sort of blow mine off, because I don't really like all that attention. That's tough for me.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, so was this like a realization of like, oh, working 18 hours a day sucks and is no way to live in the long term? Had you been thinking about that for years prior to this, or?
I would say for like a year prior, I was like, I wish I can get a full night's sleep. I wish I could turn my phone off. If my phone ever went dead, it was like a crazy moment, you know?
Right.
And I was like, I wish I can just not have to sleep with my face on my phone and enjoy life and experience things. And I didn't have social media or nothing like that. And I was like, I just kind of want to see, like, what are the kids doing these days? Like I have money now. Like, let me enjoy it. Let me live, you know? And so, yeah, I was like, in my mid to late 20-ish, and I just sold all my businesses. And some of them I gave away. Some of them I just ceased operating. Some of them I was just done. And when I did that, I moved to LA to be like a young, rich bachelor.
How long ago was that?
That was a few years ago. It was like almost 3 years ago that I had stopped up.
And you had what, tens of millions of dollars at this point?
I don't want to say exactly how much, but I was well enough that I can just live any lifestyle I wanted with no concern.
Right. And so your goal in moving to LA was pretty much just like, I want to have more of like a normal fun life and like socialize and just figure out what life is like after working this hard all these years? Yeah,
man. I was like, let me party. Let me do this, you know?
You say party and everybody on earth thinks drinking and doing cocaine. And for you, party. The only person on earth will say, oh, yeah, I'll stay up for a few days partying, and means being sober throughout the whole thing. It's like hard. Like, there's going to be people who just don't believe you. I believe you, but seems kind of crazy.
So this is what partying looks like to me. Ready? So, like, for example, so now I'm friends with, we'll talk about now what partying looks like. So I'm friends with like a lot of like rappers and actors and porn stars, right? So let's say I wake up in the morning like today, and one of the guys will be like, hey man, I'm performing in LA today. Can you come like on stage with me? And I'll be like, whoa, really? Like, you know, there's thousands of people. They're like, yeah, come bro, it'll be sick. I'm like, all right. So I'll jet over to where he's at, you know, go on stage, turn up. Then he'll be like, hey man, do you have a spot where I could bring every girl that's on stage with us right now back to party? You know, and they want to like drink and drug, whatever. And I'm like, let me make a quick call. And I'll hit somebody up. And let's say I hit up like a publicly wealthy figure, right? And I'll hit, because now we'll be buddies. And I'll be like, yo, man, I got, 100 girls, like 4 of the rappers and their entourages, and we're going to come through and party, right? He's like, run it, bro. So I'm like, all right, bet. then like that part will be ending, and like that dude or another one of the wealthy guys at the party that I'm friends with will be like, hey man, we're about to take the jet over to Miami. Do you want to come out there? You know, we're gonna spend like the day. We're trying to get lunch over at you know, Nobu Miami or whatever it is. I'm like, all right, let's go for lunch, right? So then I'll like pick whoever it is at the party. I'm like, yo, you girls want to come to Miami for lunch real quick? And we'll jump on the jet over at LAX. We'll fly to Miami. We'll have lunch, and they'll be like, honestly, that's kind of a long flight. We don't feel like driving home right now. Why don't we just go to Tampa, because we can hit the Hard Rock over in Tampa. We can gamble all night and see what's good there. I'm like, all right, let's do that. Hop back on the jet. I'll nap on the jet. We land. We gamble. Like, let's say we win $1 million, right? Something like that. They're like, all right, we got $1 million extra bucks that we didn't plan on. What are we gonna do with it? What we can do is we can go get this house over in Orlando, and then we could rent out the whole theme park and just like, you know, kick it for a day, and then we'll go do that, you know, and then it'll just be like me, a few girls, like a rapper, and like some of my wealthy friends. We'll just rent out the theme park, and you know, we live like that until we're just like, hey, we're all tired. We want to go back to LA and just like go home. We're like, all right, let's go home.
It sounds like, you know, basically you have no respect for sleep. And you're not doing anything. Like, you've done enough productive work that you're like, I'm not going to do anything productive. I'm just going to fuck off. Because, like, I frequently have those kind of, like, opportunities where, like, you know, a rapper would be like, drive here and, like, do this video with me. Or, like, you know, like, come do this. And I'm just like, I'm focused on making money. Like, I don't really, like, you know, and building up this company and doing this content, et cetera. For me, like, when a rapper's like, hey, come do this with me, I'm just, usually I look at my phone like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I'm not doing that. But I respect that you've actually, you know, really embraced it, because there's a lot of good that can come from that, you know, from the socializing aspect and everything. But what's the long run of that? Like, how do you think about that?
So right now I'm just living life.
Right.
That's it. Right. I did get kind of bored of that, to be honest. So it's been like, we'll call it a rock solid 2.5 years of just partying. Right.
Right.
Just like, you know, dicking off, whatever. And I did get sort of bored of it. Maybe like 6 months ago. So slowly I've been getting back into doing business. And I think I'm doing it more. I'm really, really selective about what business I get involved in now. Not just because I have afforded the opportunity to be selective, but also I only want to do things that are fun and cool. You know, like if it's not cool to me, I don't have to lose sleep over it anymore.
Right.
And like what you were saying just before, like imagine that you didn't have the financial responsibilities that you have now. Like you don't, let's say you no longer had to be or were at all worried about making money. You probably would hit that rapper back and be like, that sounds cool. Let me do that.
Because I see what happens to people when they get like genuinely like really filthy rich, and it just seems like, oh, like you're kind of at the point where being productive doesn't matter. So you basically like spend your days just sort of traveling around, interacting with other influencers and like doing these little like clout meetups and stuff, which I get it. And, you know, I respect it. But yeah, like at this point, it is kind of hard for me to imagine doing that. But then also I do spend a bit of time like thinking about that sometimes too. Like, is there going to come a point where I'm just like, I don't have to like grind this hard? And like, what does it say about me that I consider that such a virtue? Like when I'm listening to you talk, I consider myself to have a pretty balanced life now. When I'm hearing you talk about working 18 hours a day, I'm like, that is not a life. But how far is that from what I'm doing when I'm really like in the office 9 hours a day? You know, like the kid has made me like pull back from that quite a bit, because it's like, okay, I'm going to really regret it down the road if I don't like have a lot of fucking memories of like really being involved with this process of raising you, you know. And it's kind of, it is hard to balance like being a workaholic. It's interesting you were able to break out of it so abruptly like that.
I mean, I did hit all the extremes, you know, went from extreme working to and still not sleeping, to extreme like partying, traveling, and dicking off and still not sleeping. I haven't quite found balance, which is something I really, really would love to find. And I think really soon it's going to happen, now that I'm slowly entering business again. And I think it's going to start teetering into a more balanced.
Because that's kind of the question is like, yeah, what do you, like in terms of business, what are the kind of businesses that you would like to, that you think you might have something to offer in? Because when you talk about that like rehab shit, it's like, holy fuck, that sounds like you're bringing like so much momentum and energy into a business that, yes, you could make money in, but I'm assuming it's not like exponential money. Like if you were to build like a new social thing or an app or like whatever the fuck kind of shit people get into these days, clothing line, whatever it is that people build that all of a sudden could be worth $100 million, you know?
So it's really hard, exactly like that, to entice me. And I think that I'm actually desensitized, which I think is actually a really poor quality for me to have. When somebody wants to pitch me an idea, or even that I consider an idea for business, I say to myself, how fast can this be worth $100 million, right? And I'm like, Probably never.
Right.
And if it does, like so far down the line, and I'm like, I don't want to work the next 5 years like a slave, right? Making only $100,000 a year off that business, hoping maybe it's worth $100 million one day,
Right.
which I think is really poor quality in me currently, but it is something. So instead, I do a little bit less concerned with the money, the benefits it'll reap, and more so, is that something I could be passionate or enjoy doing even if I didn't make money?
Right. Because yeah, I mean, there's two different kind of businesses. Is that like you could start, like I'm very confident that you or I could start a burger restaurant tomorrow and have it be an extremely popular, successful burger restaurant. You know, like
Sure.
I know I got that in me.
Yeah,
I got some ideas floating around in my head. I could make a cool ass burger spot, and I respect anybody who starts a restaurant or whatever. But then the other side of that is you could start a clothing company or an app or some kind of social media thing that maybe, you know, you have to get investment and all this stuff. Maybe it could be worth $1 billion down the road. But at least in the meantime, you're probably going to spend a lot of time wondering if this idea is completely retarded or not.
Yeah.
As opposed to the burger thing where I'm pretty sure I can nail it. Give me a couple months. Like, we're going to have a good burger spot.
I agree, by the way, the burger spot.
Yeah.
I think we could absolutely just cream it.
It's like how I talk when I was talking to Josh from Raw Papers and everything. And it's like, this guy is one of like the brightest souls I've ever dealt with. He has so much creative energy. He's so motivated. And he's selling little pieces of paper that are just pretty much basic paper. He knows so much about it. He's gotten so deep into the weeds of like understanding everything about this. But I said to him at one point, I'm like, you know, I'm pretty sure that like, you know, you could run a good candy store. Like, do you ever feel like that you're like meant for more than just doing this? But I mean, if he's motivated by money, then he's definitely in a pretty fucking good business, because selling rolling papers to people that they buy habitually every fucking day is pretty good business to be in. I don't know. Like, it's tricky to figure out like what's going to motivate you once you get past, you know, like if you know people in your life who like sell drugs, I mean, those people are trying to like make $100,000 or make a couple $100,000 every year, period. Because it's tough to keep doing that over year after year. Once you actually have built something that's really bringing in money, then your motivation sort of has to become more accurately stated. Because, you know, if I had just been hustling my whole life, I mean, hustling's dope, but it's not building something.
I would say hustling is dope for what it is, but in real life, hustling is not dope. I would discourage, and I do in my personal life, anybody from hustling. Bro, so I found, when I went legitimate, I found that anything I did in that prior life was now null and void. You can't apply that money to anything. Mm-hmm. You cannot become a real human being. You cannot be a real adult. You can't, I mean, sure, if you clean it or whatever, you add steps, you're spending tax money anyway. It's the same as taxes. You might as well go legitimate, build credit, build a fortune, build an empire, do something real, you know, own real estate, own a business. The more real of a person you are, the more access to more real things you can have in life. Right. You cannot lease an exotic car usually when you're selling drugs, right? How can you apply for the loan? If you're a cash man, you have no bank account, they'll be like, you can't prove you'll pay us back. We're not giving you a loan. Now you're stuck paying cash for the car. And even then, you know, if the IRS sees you flexing in a Lambo, they're gonna be like, bro, how do you have a Lambo? You have no job.
Getting $1 million in cash illegally and then having to like figure out what to do with it is like such a complicated fucking problem. It's like a prison in and of itself, because it's like you have it, but you can't really spend it in any other ways that you would be intelligent to spend it. Although you could also probably just like put it in crypto and then pretty much clean it that way. That would be pretty easy, right?
Everything that I did prior was pre-crypto anyway.
You own crypto now?
I don't want to get too much into crypto conversation.
You scared of the IRS?
No. So there's a lot of politics in the crypto world that I'm in. I'm the creator of some of the most known and biggest tokens, something that most people don't know. I'm also the faceless person behind bringing crypto to the social life. So any socialite or interesting social aspects that crypto now has, I am the faceless soul who brought that here. And by doing that, what had happened was other people had the opportunity to take credit for it or put their face in my faceless slot.
Why, you didn't want it? You didn't want credit for doing work in that space?
Well, the thing is, I didn't know enough about crypto, and I would say I still don't. And I also, being so new to social media, didn't have a public reach in any means, right? I was always so private in my life. that these people easily could fill those slots for the benefit of the greater goal, right? The immediate greater goal. But what had happened moving forward from there, which I didn't understand until it was too late, is now these faces now get to take all of the credit and future benefit from it, while I never do. So while I'm sitting here in the shadows and I'm watching essentially some of my closest friends making this tremendous fortune off the work that I did bringing them into this light, and I kept saying, where's mine?
Right.
And they'd say, oh, we'll let you know about the next one. I said, what are you talking about? I gave you the first one. And so there's a lot of internal conflict I have about crypto. But because I'm still internally conflicted about it, I don't publicly speak about my position or which ones or things like that. And I'm super, super limited, even on social media, to even acknowledging the existence of crypto or which ones.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah. Let's keep it vague. Can we talk about that? You'll tell me what coins you were involved in creating off camera?
Yeah, I'll tell you off camera.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Was gambling always a pastime of yours throughout the years that you were doing this rehab shit?
All right, here we go. So this is the part that I love now.
Okay.
Now let's talk about some gambling.
This is the shit you like?
I love it.
Were you always into gambling, or like when did that become a thing?
All right. So I come from a thick bloodline of really high stakes gamblers. Way before my time, my family owned casinos, all of this, right? I will say this as a preface. So people on my social media, first of all, most people on social media are idiots, right? And the things they comment, I'm like, what planet are you from where that's a reality, right? And a common theme that people try to hate on about is that I must be employed by casinos to try to convince people that you can win and that gambling is cool and come. None of that is true. I hate casinos so much that I hope they burn down while the executives are in the building, right? And you could definitely quote me on that.
I won't have to. You just said it on a podcast.
So my family did used to own casinos before my time and all this. So starting really young, I was introduced to the concept of gambling, right? I started gambling when I was like 8 years old or something like that. But on like more of a reasonable level, like, play for a couple dollars. I started by learning with coins. I'd bet, 10 cents, something like this. We'd all have coins. And that's how I started to understand the rules of different games. When I was like 11 and 12, which is the same time I started selling drugs, my community is made up of all either wealthy Jews or Italian mobsters, right? So I spent a lot of time around these families, and the Jews in my neighborhood were being bar mitzvahed and bat mitzvahed when they were 13, and basically they all were getting like $100,000 in cash gifts. So at 13 years old, half my town, 13-year-olds had $100,000 and no bills because their families were rich anyway.
I would always hear this about the bar mitzvahs and shit. Like these kids just getting offensive amounts of money, and I'm like, why the fuck wasn't I born Jewish?
Yeah. Well, I was born Jewish. I am Jewish, but I didn't have a bar mitzvah like that.
Damn, really?
I had a super traditional, like religious bar mitzvah. No party, no gifts, no money.
Wow.
Yeah. But so there was the Italian mobster half of my town, and then there was like the rich Jews half of my town. And between the two, everybody had money, and everybody was just like walking certain fine lines, So I started gambling. We started housing our own underground casinos, and our family, my parents actually hate gambling. They're the only ones in my family. But every other family of all my friends super supported it. I used to gamble against my friends' parents all the time. One time I beat my friend's dad so bad in a card game that he ran out of money and had to write me a check. And he goes, hey, can you not deposit this until such and such a day? And started housing these underground casinos. And it's just what we did in the neighborhood, It was the cool thing to do, was to be invited and gamble at one of these events, We did it every single day after school. It's all we did. And at this time, we're playing like anywhere from like $100 to $1,000 a hand, and we're 12, some of us were 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, playing $1,000 hands of blackjack. And we'd have, 5 poker tables, 3 blackjack tables, we'd play some dice games. We used to gamble so much we'd invent our own card games because we were getting burnt out.
And so you were acting as the house, and you were actually like profiting from these hands of blackjack if you were the casino?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And how much work did it take for you to figure out like how to properly run that kind of business?
It didn't. It just happened on its own. I mean, if you ever really thought about it, it's actually really simple, right?
Yeah.
And what we were always doing in the beginning was like fake money. Like every hand, we just run a mental tally with each other for who owes who how much. And then at the end of the session or whatever, you'd be like, hey man, you owe me, 4,000 or something like that. And be like, all right, I'll bring it to school tomorrow. Bring it to school, I'll give you 4,000. He'll be like, hey, I'll play you right now. I want my 4,000 back. All right, let's do it. You know.
You have problems with people getting way too in debt and then not being able to pay?
Not really. I think we were too young to understand that concept, but also we all had all of this money, whether it be from your, mobster family or your bar mitzvah money, or for me, like selling drugs, that it wasn't even like an issue. None of us had bills. We were, so young and had rich families. Like it wasn't an issue.
Right. So you were making money off that at an early age.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then how does that transfer into your adult life?
So I realized when I was that young that I was a better player than most of my friends, right? And back then, to win like however much it was, call it like, a few thousand a day or something like that, was like really cool because the most we were doing was spending $20 to go to the movies, you know? So when I got older, I continued to gamble. My grandparents had bought me and my younger brother my first ever fake ID because they wanted to go to Atlantic City so much, and we were underage, so we were always getting thrown out, and they couldn't gamble. So they found this guy who would make really good fakes and made for me and my brother fakes just so we could be in the casino and gamble with my grandparents. So I started gambling in casinos at a really young age, but I wasn't like winning a lot or losing a lot where they ever had to like check who I really was. They were just like checking my age and they just let me play. I wasn't like cashing out 10, 20, 100. It wasn't like that. I was playing small in the casino. Oh. And then I was in business. Then I was homeless. Then I was in business. And then I was on my, now I'm in my retirement phase, right? And so when I retired, now I had, all this extra funds, all the time in the world. And I was living in LA. And as soon as I moved to LA, I started spending every week I'd go for anywhere from like 2 to 4 to 5 days, whatever, in Vegas. So I was immediately living half Vegas and half LA. And I was winning pretty good. And in the beginning, it was like win 20,000 to 50,000. And that was pretty tight. I was like, I don't need this money. They give me everything for free now, comped, and I like made 20 to 50 bands this weekend, no doubt.
Right.
Then I was like, let me play a little bigger. And then I was winning like 100, 200, 300,000 in those couple of days. And I said, I think I'm onto something here. And I was doing it like every week, kind of. And I was like, I'm kind of onto something. And I said, this is becoming so much money now that I'm risking and rewarding that I should really pay attention to what I got going on here. I said, I always knew that I was like maybe above average player, but this is enough money where I really should focus.
And your game's Baccarat?
So my number one game is Baccarat, but it used to be blackjack and more specifically double deck blackjack.
And you were counting cards? Not
counting cards.
Is that like extremely hard to pull off these days, I hear?
It's not impossible to do, and people do it, and they usually always are caught doing it. I mean, the security systems and the skill checks in casinos are so above and beyond that countries' governments actually contract to casino security to hire them to do national security. I mean, that's how advanced a lot of them are.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm not counting cards. I am really good at math, and I am really an emotionally sound guy in such regard. I do have discipline in that. So I think I'm able to make clear-headed decisions when a lot of other players can't because they're getting emotional, as well as they make silly decisions and like convince themselves that they have a feeling about something. But let me tell you right now, feelings have no regard to math.
Right. But I'm also like hearing you were talking about like how your coach, your gambling coach, advises you. And I'm listening to you talk about it. This was at the poker game the other day, and you're basically kind of saying like, he'll instruct me on like, okay, when I'm feeling good or if I'm in the right state of mind to get, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sitting there thinking, and I don't know anything about Baccarat, but I'm thinking, these are all just casino games. The house always has an edge. No matter what kind of pattern you bet in, et cetera, it doesn't really matter because they always have the edge. And if you just keep playing in the long term, you're always going to lose. I don't know. Like, what do you say? I'm sure you've had plenty of people say that too.
I'm super stoked you just said that. So I'm going to be the end-all, be-all of that doubt that everybody in the world gives me.
Okay.
If that was true, then why am I banned from the city of Las Vegas gaming?
I mean, yes. To me, that is the greatest testament to you being something special at gambling is that they would be willing to ban you. Because I know they ban very few sports gamblers, for instance, but they do ban some sports gamblers that they really feel like have a real edge.
So there's been 4 Baccarat players in history to be banned from the game Baccarat. 2 out of the 4 were accused, possibly caught doing what the casinos refer to as cheating, right? My opinion on it is not relevant, but again, I'd love to see the casinos burn. So if it was up to me as a gambler, I would love to see those two baccarat players continue playing, right?
Right.
So that out of the four of us, there's no like scale that says who's the best, who's the worst, who's most skilled, blah, blah, blah. There's just been four in history that have been banned. Two of them were partners in something and they got banned. They can't play. The third guy, I honestly don't know who he is. I was given his name. I never really looked into him and I don't know his story. And then there's me. So out of the four of us to ever be banned, and I'm not cheating, and if I was cheating, they definitely would have caught me by now, then I must be doing something the casinos thought was impossible. And, I mean, there's the testimony. I mean, I can't play anymore.
Do you not want to speak openly about what your edge is in these games?
So I can't do that, and I'll tell you why, right? So I do have a plan that could bring every casino to their knees. And I may pull the trigger on this and watch these casinos burn. I might do that. It's something I've been working on for about a year now, and I don't want to say how far or short I am to the ability of pulling the trigger, but I may do that, and I believe it's going to absolutely crush these casinos. I think some of them are going to go out of business.
You're talking about like a lawsuit, not just taking a bunch of money from them?
I don't even want to say what it is, and no way do I want to prepare them. So the casino has a lot of moles and a lot of snakes. They make fake Instagram accounts, fake TikToks. They send like hot girls to my parties. They're watching this podcast, no doubt. So here's to you guys. You know, they do all these things for sure, and they're scrutinizing every word I say to see what's happening next, right? So I'm not going to say what it is, but for sure I have the capability of bringing a lot of these casinos to their knees if I ever chose to do so.
Right.
But what my actual edge is, I can't say, and the reason for that is, aside from possibly a plan that could exist, is if I were to sell what my exact edge is, right? The amount of money that I've amassed in the game Baccarat is like tens of millions, right? And if I were to sell it, first of all, what happened is as soon as they possibly could, the casinos would change their ability to give me the information I need to figure out how to beat them, right? So even if right now, like even privately, if I told you what I did, which respectfully I wouldn't, but let's say I did off the air, as soon as they knew that you knew that, it's done. They're going to adjust the way the game Baccarat is handled, right? So I really have one shot at it, and the amount of money that I would put the evaluation at for my algorithm, it would be roughly $50 million. So for someone to pay me $50 million probably is not going to happen. And the guys that, first of all, most people can't afford that. And the guys that could afford that, they have to first hope I'm telling them the truth. They have to hope that it works. And then for me, I'd have a lot of concern even selling it to them, even if they did come with a check for $50 million, right? Because if they don't do it exactly how I teach them and adjust their emotional self to handle what I'm going to tell them and all these things, if any one thing is wrong, they're going to start losing money. And then I'm going to feel like a real dick, like, bro, I just took $50 million from you, and here you are still losing millions and millions and millions playing Baccarat with my strategy.
I mean, there's definitely that back and forth. Like, I've had that conversation with pro poker players where I know a bunch of pro poker players who run training sites where they basically, will teach you how to play well. I know some poker players who are equally impressive, and they're basically sworn to like a code of never coaching anyone because they feel like the intelligence that they have is so beneficial to them. And if they were to, really bring it out to the people, yes, they could make money in the short term, but in the long term, they'd be kind of fucking over the ecology of the game. But it's weird in poker because the secret of how to play poker optimally is literally like a fucking $500 program that you download on your computer that can tell you how to play every single situation, which is different than what you're talking about, which is shrouded in mystery.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But you've taken a lot of money out of the casinos before you got banned. Was there anything leading up to you getting banned that was dramatic?
Yeah. So the last full session I had, it took a week, and I won 11 million, a little over 11.5 million.
Okay.
It came in two checks because they had to break it between two casinos. I knew that week might be one of my last weeks having no issues gambling.
You're starting to feel the heat, or you just knew you were winning enough?
Well, so the casinos do crazy things that most people will never experience. So at least, like conservatively, 70% of high stakes gambling is politics. Negotiating deals with casinos, and the deals are like such a large array of deals to negotiate, right? Terms, what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do, right?
So once you're really gambling a lot of money, you get to start calling the shots with the casino because they want your business so bad?
100%, unless you're winning. Right?
Right.
Now, in the very, very beginning, they're like, oh, the guy's just hot. He's lucky.
Anybody can win for a while.
Yeah, exactly. And so in the beginning, they were like letting me, I was calling the shots, just as you said. Well, once they saw that I'm winning at an alarming rate statistically, right? And the quantity of money that I'm winning, because I'm playing $250,000 per hand in Baccarat and I'm flat betting, right? Which is also unheard of for winners. They're like, he's winning too much, too often. So what do we do now? So they started doing crazy things. They would break into my room and do wild things. They would mess with my food. They would jam my Wi-Fi and internet. They would. They had like feds run down to my room one time, flipping cushions. I mean, I could write a whole book on stories about crazy things casinos have done to me to throw me off my game. One time I had like seven. I think it was 7 million. I think it was 7. I had 7 million on me, and I pulled up in my McLaren, right, and that's like my daily driver. And the executives, the VP of the casino, gave me permission that anytime I pull up, I can just self-park right at the front door. Keep my keys. That's it. 'Cause, that's what I wanted. That's what my request was, and they abided. So I do that this particular time. And there was like one moment. I'll get on with the story, then you'll see. So I pull up. I got 7 million on me, and I park it myself. The valet guy walks up, gives me my ticket. And I did give him my keys that time, It's no problem. I'm going to go above and beyond and make everybody happy because valet usually doesn't know that I have this rule. So I beeline it. I find the table I want. I sit down. I reserve it, whatever. And now I put the 7 million is sitting like, if I wanted to reach it, I'd have to bend a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting here. They're getting the cards ready. Everything's being adjusted for my play. And all of a sudden my chair gets pushed into the table, and I'm like wedged between the table, and I'm sitting down. And at this exact moment, I had nobody with me. I didn't have my bodyguards with me. I didn't have friends with me. I didn't have my coach with me. It was like this exact moment. I had 7 million. Now I can't reach it because I can't bend my body. I'm stuck against the table, and nobody's around me. And I can't tell what's happening, right? So all of a sudden I see 2 other people standing on me, and I can't really see much. So I just flail like almighty heck, right? And I stand up, and I might have even been standing at the chair at this time, and I start screaming. And what happens is it was 3 security guards that pushed my chair and it kind of held me there. And I'm screaming, and I'm thinking if I scream loud enough that everybody that can hear me has to look. So if there's enough eyes on me, it'd be really hard for someone to rob me of 7 million standing in the heart of the casino, right? I'm like, what's happening? What's going on? Da-da-da. The pit boss runs over. I said, bro, what's happening? Da-da-da. And he tells security to back away from me. And now I'm like standing by myself and I have motion. And he starts talking to them. And there's a female there. And she turns to me and she goes, do you drive a green McLaren? And I said, yeah. And she goes, oh, you didn't get your valet ticket and we need your keys. And I said, what? She goes, yeah. You can't do that or we're going to have to ask you to leave our property. I said, are you out of your mind? I have 7 million sitting right here. What are you talking about? A valet ticket? And I said, oh, you mean a ticket like this? And she goes, oh, okay. And then they just walk off and I never see them again, right? Now, everybody knew I had a ticket. Everybody knew they had my keys. But they also knew that I was coming in with 7 million trying to absolutely break this casino. So they will do anything they can to throw me off and throw me through a loop and just mess with the situation. And that's just one of like countless stories.
And they genuinely don't know what you're doing to do so well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so as these casinos do it, I was watching them ramp up what they were doing to me, as well as offer me less, say no to me more. They stopped giving me private jets, and I'm like, that's weird. They're like, how much money you bringing? Which is a question they never asked me because I'm some of the biggest winners these casinos ever had, so they know how much money I might be bringing.
Right.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? I said, I'm going to bring 3 million this week, and they go, oh, that's not enough for a jet. And I said, what? And I just saw through their lies quickly what they were really trying to do is de-incentivize me to walk in their door.
Which is very much their right?
Unfortunately, but yeah. But, I watched it happen slowly. And then eventually certain casinos over time would make up a false reason and say, hey, you did something that was against our rules, so now we have to ban you.
Right.
And I was like, I didn't do that. And they're like, well, we have reason to believe you did, so you're banned and there's nothing you can do about it. So now if you call a lot of the casinos are going to say, oh, no, he's not banned because he beat our system. He's banned because he yelled at a dealer or because he made a mess in the villa.
Do you think part of your mistake was that you became more high profile on social media and everything, or would that not really have mattered?
I don't think it would have mattered, but I can tell you this, that casinos have called me as I got more high profile on social media, and sometimes I'll make a post about them, and I'll tell everybody, don't go here. Right? Or, hey, I caught this casino cheating and this is how I caught them. And I will get a call like immediately following that saying, hey, can you take that post down? Right? Hey, can you please not say that about us? Hey, this and that. So I think they might even be worried about this massive grasp by hand in the gambling community.
Right. Wow. So when we see you at the gambling or at the table with like Lil Baby or whatever, you told me about how many stipulations they put on you that you're not allowed to touch any chips when you're in there. Like they'll let you in when you're with somebody who's gambling a lot, but they won't let you interact with the gambling in any way?
So in the last 2 weeks, I've encountered this like pretty heavily, right? Now, the first time that it was like really brought to my attention, the stipulations of when I'm sitting with somebody, is I was with Lil Baby, and I don't want to say which casino we're at because, right, I'm not going to plug you guys. So we're at a particular casino, and I get a call. A lot of casinos, I have to tell them when I'm coming in, right?
And side question, if you had not been kicked out of the casinos in Vegas and we were doing this interview, would you sit here and just be like, yeah, just like gambling? Would you not admit that you had a secret? Or some kind of
I would,
extra edge?
What I always say is that I have a lucky coin, and when I flip it, heads is player, tails is bank.
So you would have acted kind of like dumb.
Yeah, I would have totally have blown this off, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you would have done it, but you would have given me some bullshit run around answer?
I'm not even sure that exactly I would have taken this offer to do the podcast. I might have actually have told you, like let's say we were talking yesterday.
Let me keep doing this for a few more months till I get banned.
Yeah, or I'd be like, hey, you can, only talk about
Right.
the parties or, something. But I definitely would not have divulged in
Right.
any depths of my gambling.
That's cool that we get a little bit more.
Yeah,
Real
you're the
deal.
first, by the way.
Yeah.
I've never said any of this stuff before on the air.
No, I appreciate it. But so, okay.
So the first time was like, the first time that these stipulations when I'm with somebody became so relevant, I was with Lil Baby, and we're at the casino, and I have to call a lot of the casinos before I come in to say, hey, I'm going to be on property, because they always keep an eye out for me. I said, I don't want to be bothered. I'm just going to hang out. Or I'm just coming in for dinner, or I'm just, my buddy's got a room here. I'm just going to go there and hang out, whatever it might be. So I contact a friend of mine, and I says, hey, I'm coming in with Lil Baby, and he's going to gamble. I'm just going to chill. And they get back to me, and they say, okay, you're good to sit there with him. You're okay to coach him, and you're okay to just hang out, but you don't place a single bet. Don't even act like you might place a bet. Don't have cash out. Don't do anything. Just sit there and just hang out. I said, okay, no problem. And so me and Lil Baby, we played. When I walked up, he was already playing a little bit. He got there before me, and he was losing, and we sat down. And I was like, hey, man, let me help you a little. Let's do this, right? Let's do it right, And it was right after his concert. We all came from stage straight to the table. And we played 25 hands, and we won 24 of them. And he's
Baccarat.
In Baccarat.
And he knows what he's doing?
He's definitely a gambler, and he's definitely a Baccarat player. I mean, he knows how to play, for sure. And he's super aggressive. So if I was like, hey, man, if I was you, I would only bet $5K, and I'd bet it on player. He goes, you like player? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, all right, and just go max bet player, And I'm like...
I mean, that's kind of like what I said to you about you before. Like, my girl was like, is he really good at poker? And I'm like, well, he's more good than he is bad because he's so fucking aggressive that it's just like, there's just like like when it goes badly, it could go very, very badly. But like the famous, well, we don't need to get into it right away because there's more to discuss about this. But like, there's been a lot of famous hands with you already where you just basically got somebody to fold like an incredibly good hand and you had nothing, but you're just bluffing like crazy. And I mean, aggression in poker is usually better than meekness.
Yeah, and if you really look, I'm really only showing my bluffs during the game anyway,
right?
Because they're convinced that I'm always bluffing. So sometimes I flop the stone cold nutters, and I play the exact same way, and they're convinced that their ace king, one pair, two pair, top, something like that is good when it's not.
Right.
But those I keep to myself till they watch it on TV.
But so what value are you bringing to the Lil Baby situation? Is he looking at you as somebody who's like really guiding him and helping him be better at this, or what?
So when a lot of those types of like guys had first hit me up, it was really like, hey, man, I like to gamble on my own. And if I'm going to gamble, can you at least like increase my chance of winning, right? But like pretty quickly, I would say like 95% of any of these like famous people that hit me up about gambling, by the end of our first conversation, we've already like surpassed talking about gambling. We're talking about like friendship, and we all like seem to be blossoming friendships. There's actually not that many that hit me up about gambling. And I'm like, hey man, my whole life's not gambling and I can lose, and let me give you some details. And they're like, you know what? If you can't help me gamble, then I'm good. It almost never happens that way. So when I did play this time with Baby, right, we won 24 out of 25 hands. And actually, one of the real reasons we lost that 25th hand is I told him, so there's a lot of strategy to how you play. You can't just like sit down, gamble, and like, oh, I'm winning. Okay, I'm going to go, right? There's more to it. So one of the things was I said, hey, man, pick your number before we play. Where do you want to get when you're going to call it quits? Where are you happy stopping? And he told me the number, how many dollars it was. I said, okay. So me and Coach were there, so we're going to keep an eye on that. And we hit that number, and we said, hey, man, let's go. So we got all these girls. Let's go party, right? And he goes, nah, I'm gonna play until I lose. So he played, and then he lost one hand, but what he was good about it, he lost the one hand, and he goes, color me up, I'm out, So that particular time, we were just partying all night, he invited me to the stage for his concert that night and stuff like that. He hit me up. He's like, yo, I'm in town, come through if you're here. And so we partied, and then after the concert, after partying stuff, we played a little, and then after playing, by then it was like 6 a.m. So then the next time that these stipulations became really serious was I was with Roddy Ricch, Lil Baby again, Benjamin Kicks, and Kifa. And
shout out Kifa.
Yeah.
Rare mention right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, because he's Roddy's A&R or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we were all coming into play, and the thing was we were playing at a property that I don't even know if I've ever been into, 'cause it's not considered one of the high end ones. And so I was really unfamiliar. None of them knew me by face. But I know that I'm banned. They just don't know who I am. I just look like I sell drugs.
So
right?
if you're banned from one casino in Vegas, they share information between them?
Oh, for sure. Especially executives. Because a lot of the execs over the years switch companies. So they already are like
And that's
friends.
one thing they can all agree on is that they're all competing. But if there's somebody who's gotten one over on one of them, they all want them to stay the fuck out. So
Yeah, exactly.
That's the one thing they can unite on.
Exactly. So I come into this property, which I'm unfamiliar. They're unfamiliar with me. And it's all these guys are really famous, and we got like paparazzi and people trying to bother them, and we're just trying to gamble and chill and drink, and they're drinking and vibe and whatever. So I says to the pit boss, I says, hey, let's get a private room in the back, so everyone's entourage can just be left alone. Mm-hmm. He goes, no, you got to be special for that, right? And it was like this older white dude, and I says, well, I'm kind of special, so why don't you just get that room warmed up, right? And he goes, no. He goes, you got to be really special. And I says, my man, I don't think you understand. I am very special. I'm the most special, and so are these guys. Let's get the room. So we start arguing. So I throw my I don't want to say which card it is, because you'll know what company I was with, but I'm the invite-only black card elite at every property, right? So I throw this company's invite-only black card on the table, and I said, bro, I'm trying to tell you, I am the guy you're describing that qualifies for this private room. Make it happen. Well, he ended up running my card, and immediately I get security up in my face, and they say, sir, you got to go. Mm-hmm. I says, no, I don't. They says, so the guy comes back, goes, you're banned. You got to go to security and get off our property. Now, mind you, so Roddy Ricch is standing to my left. Lil Baby is over here. Kifa's there. It's all these guys. This is like kind of embarrassing. And also,
it must be crazy for them because they're used to seeing people get busted for all kinds of shit and run into trouble in the street with the cops, etc. But they're probably not expecting it to happen at the casino.
Yeah, and most people have never seen this, even like regular people,
Yeah.
And they're looking at me, and I'm like, this is kind of whack, So I made a deal with the security guard. I said, why don't you stand with me against the wall instead of throwing me out until an executive FaceTimes me right now, and I hand my phone to this pit boss, and they get direct instructions that I'm allowed to be here, right? So that everybody agrees. And I'm standing there against the wall. The call comes in. The pit boss talks to the exec, and the rule was I am allowed to be there in the casino, and I'm allowed to sit at the table. But I cannot coach anybody. I cannot say anything. If I touch a single card, chip, or dollar, I am immediately ejected with all the security force they have on property.
Can't even talk, jeez.
Yeah. And and when I post this kind of thing on social media, people are like, yeah, sure, bro, whatever. Well, listen, all these dudes are posting about me. I mean, every rapper has got something about me on their page right now. These dudes were really sitting with me. Roddy was there, Baby was there, everybody was there. This is like no cap, like. This is like all gown, no cap. You know what I mean? Fact check me with anybody you want.
Right.
So they run down. That was the rule. I can sit there. I can't say anything. I can't coach. Can't touch nothing. So what I did was I put a mask on. Of course, I have to have a mask on, and I pull it high, and I play like the whole time with my hand in front of my face, so I can say things. If I was gambling, I would bet 1 unit player. If I was gambling, I go 4 units bank like this.
And nobody's giving you a hard time about that?
Nobody gave me a hard time, but I think one thing that worked for me was the pit boss who was in charge got direct instruction that not just am I important in whatever facet I am, but exactly who it is that's sitting with me.
Right.
So I think he understood that he might be a little bit out of reach here to make such stringent demands.
Wow.
So they kind of gave me a little bit of space, and we all gambled and had a good time, and we were just there for the party. We're like there for a day in Vegas, and that's it, chilling. Some people won, some people lost. Everyone was doing their own thing, just like drinking. They were like going back to the concert, coming back, going. The Raiders game was that day. Some people left for the Raiders game, so everyone was just chilling. But that was when it like really was like thrown in my face, like how serious these policies are about me even being on property, even if I'm with like famous figures.
So is this upsetting to you that you basically can't do the thing that you have had a lot of fun doing over the years, even if, take you having an edge out of it? I mean, you're just not allowed to engage in this pastime that so many people get to enjoy, huh?
One of the most heartbreaking things for me, and the casinos are going to love when I say that they broke my heart in any way, but so be it, was that when I was living this lifestyle, it was all on their dime. You mean like 200 passenger jets. One time I threw a 1,000-person party in one of my villas. It has 2 indoor pools. The entire floor of a building was mine. I had my own private elevator. And what I did was I had them fly me and like a couple of my people from Vegas to LA, where we picked up just a slew of like porn stars and influencers and models and some other homies and stuff, and flew them all back to Vegas to party. And we had this 1,000-person party that all these incredibly cool people showed up at, and I can't do any of that now.
And it just felt good that it was all in their dime.
Oh, that's the best. That was the real Jew in me came out. And and they when they took that away without giving me a heads up. So when I'm planning my next party or I'm planning my next event or whatever, come to find out all of it is now off the table and I'm just left, with my dick in my hand. It really pissed me off.
Yeah.
It really pissed me off, yeah.
It's the same shit in LA, or like have you thought about like going and doing a run at any other casinos, or is it not even worth it to you?
So in my career, I have done a lot of offshore gambling and private gambling, which the details I can't quite get into, but I've done a lot of that. So some of my amassed winnings came outside of Vegas.
Okay.
Maybe even, I would say, quite a bit. Now, when it comes to LA casinos, I would actually say that LA is actually a great place to play Baccarat. The worst place to play blackjack, but one of the best to play Baccarat. And there's a couple of casinos, and again, I'm not going to plug them, but you can walk in with no history, no questions, no nothing, and bet $100,000 a hand, right? Which is less than half of what my average bet is. But nonetheless, you can do a lot of damage with $100K a hand.
Right.
And so I have gambled in LA, and I probably will gamble in LA, like more seriously at some point. But right at this very moment, I'm just like basking in the glory of being one of the only people in history banned from Vegas for winning too much.
Right.
And I've gotten my dick sucked more times along the way than all the execs combined.
And that's really what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck. Okay, but put it in perspective. Like, people see you talking about winning a couple million, losing a couple million. Does that in any way touch your bottom line? Is it like, are you winning or losing an amount of money that like actually materially matters to you, or can you win or lose 5 million and it's not really a big deal?
There was a lot of times in my gambling where I would lose 5 million and you would never know that's what just happened, right? I would leave one of my parties, go play, lose 5 million, and say, you know what? I got some girls waiting or whatever it is. I'm going to go party and I'll come back tomorrow and win it back, right? There's a lot of times that happened. Now, my bottom line, has it ever been affected? There's been a lot of times, don't forget, I've been gambling on and off my whole life, right? There's a lot of times, the true gambler story, that I've lost everything, won it back, lost it again, won it back.
Even since the whole pharmacy/rehab thing, or have you been pretty much up since then?
I've been pretty much up since then, except what has happened is I've taken some incredible losses before winning it back, right? I am a lifetime winner, but before winning it back, where that in between was like really crucial, what was happening was I'm playing such massive bach, call it in Vegas, right? And then such massive nosebleed poker in other cities around the country that you can easily lose, 20 million in a week. And I play with a lot of guys way, way wealthier than me. I mean, there's like I'm not even their tax money, right? Really, a lot of big time billionaires. And if those guys cap themselves like 200 grand in a game, right? Because that 200 grand could be spent on the same thing that a poor man can spend it on. They can still buy the same amount of food at 200 grand. They can still go buy a car or a house or something. So there were times where I'm getting crushed in poker in LA, crushed in baccarat in Vegas, and at the end of a week, 2 weeks, sometimes even a month of just losing, I have to look at myself and be like, look at this fortune I just gave away, and look how hard it's going to be for me to win it back,
Right. Well, I'm glad you can say that, because it's like, that was one of my main concerns before we did this interview. It was like, I don't want to talk to anybody or do anything that's going to promote kids or just people in general gambling irrationally and thinking that they're going to be able to have an advantage in these games. And I mean, unfortunately, these days it's like there's all these fake gurus online trying to convince you that you should buy their picks for sports betting and all this fucking garbage. And it's like, I genuinely really feel bad for a lot of people out there that don't get that this is not something you're likely to win. I mean, I'm not saying that you're lying, but I'm saying for the average person, it's not happening.
So if somebody were to ever dive into any of my social media pages, I'm heavy in the comments, and the most common thing I say is, you should not gamble. You should not learn to gamble. Don't think gambling is a solution, and gambling is generally a losing proposition.
Right.
These casinos don't have these glorious lights that are on 24 hours a day because everybody's a winner. I think if I could, at any opportunity, I would discourage somebody to learn how to gamble. First of all, almost everybody loses in gambling, right? So most people are going to be losers. And in addition to that, even if they're winners, the lows as a professional gambler are so low that a lot of people have a really difficult time coping with it.
Right.
I am a lifetime winner. I do win at astronomical rates, and I do win in really large sums of money. It's true. But the lows that I've had in my life over gambling, even if my bottom line wasn't directly affected, it weighs really, really heavy. To say to yourself, let's say like an average person loses 10 grand, let's say. Think about all the things that person could have done with 10 grand. They could have paid 6 months worth of rent or whatever it may be, but instead now they have to find a way to make that money back.
Yeah, like I've just finally gotten to the point where I've sort of realized like, oh, I'm not really having that much fun gambling unless I'm gambling enough money that it's going to hurt a bit if I lose.
Yeah.
I played tournaments online the other day, lost 15K in a day. I was like, okay, I feel that a little bit. It's not making me like super upset, but it at least feels like I lost something that's significant. Next day we went and played the casino. I lost 5K. That's like half a buy-in, so that didn't really feel like anything. But yeah, I don't know. It's like there's definitely an itch to be scratched right there. It really honestly reminds me of cigarettes, because I've never been like a consistent smoker throughout my life. Just like I've usually haven't been like a very consistent gambler. I'll go and gamble once a week or every couple weeks or whatever. And it's the same thing with cigarettes or tobacco, where I do smoke a good amount of weed, but like I can very much see how people get into that groove of just smoking cigarettes over and over and over, and it feels great. And it does, like when I do gamble after not gambling for a couple of weeks, it feels like I'm itching a part of my brain that doesn't normally get satiated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's a weird thing. Would you like to, at some point, not gamble anymore, or are you having too much fun with it?
It's been so fun, dog. It's been so fun. Like, the way my gambling and honestly, I'm having a lot of fun with social media too. Yeah. And as obviously like my social media is based on gambling, right? So the doors that it's open in a cool, fun way for me have been super, super dope, super tremendous. I'm having a blast, an absolute blast. And the amount of pussy I've gotten off social media and gambling is really, really, really dope for me. It makes my life really, really easy in that department.
Why, getting girls was a little more challenging before?
It was
Especially
never,
when you need 18 a night or whatever?
It was never challenging. It just took more work. Now, so I get about 2,000 DMs a day. And yeah, a lot of them, I'd say like a third of them are like garbage. Like people saying, give me money, give me a handout. I have $100, turn it into $1 million for me, right? Another third of those are more relevant and or just people supporting my content, right? And then the final third of it is either like some interesting characters saying, hey man, we should do some kind of thing together, or girls saying, hey, I really would love a chance to suck your dick. So it became really easy once this happened for me to get pussy. It just became easier. It was never challenging, but it's just so much easier. Now I can go to my requested box, scroll without looking, hit one, and if it's a girl, probably she's saying she wants to give me some pussy.
Right, and you're open to this. You're like, come on down.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be really disrespectful of me to deny her. You know, I mean, I don't want to crush her spirits.
That's what I used to tell YouTubers and rappers and shit all the day. Everybody knows it's important to interact with your fans. Yeah. What could be a better way of interacting with a fan than to briefly have sex with them? Yeah,
you know what I mean? For me to give my body, my soul, and my spirit to one of my fans, I mean, what more can I possibly offer?
Exactly. That's the full experience right there. You sign up for my Patreon, I'm going to dick you down. For sure. Okay, so I hear you being very, very meticulous and on point with so many different parts of your life, whether it's the baccarat, these businesses, etc. But there's only one game in the casino that, you know, you're supposed to be able to win long term, which is poker. And I already complimented you and said that your aggression can be very, very good. But I wouldn't say that you are really approaching poker from the mentality of like, oh, I want to be extremely good at this. Like you play very, very loose. I'm sure you know that like a lot of the stuff that you're doing is stuff that pros would tell you to never do.
Sure.
Do you approach that a little bit differently than a lot of other things?
So, like I've been as rec as you can define the word rec, a rec poker player for like 20 years, right? And what this the real truth of it is when I was living in Vegas and LA, right? But the times that I was in Vegas, I was living in these villas in the casinos. So when quarantine happened and they shut me out, like they shut the whole world, they closed down, and I came back to my house in LA, I was so bored. You know, that's also when I started social media because I was just so bored. And my boy was like, yo, there's some poker games you can play and there's like girls there and stuff. And I was like, run that, right? So I started playing and I was like, even if there were small stakes, like some of the games I first were introduced to were like 5-5 games.
Right, we were playing the other day and you had 10 grand in front of you, and I know that don't really move you too much when it comes to gambling, right?
Right. So even when I was playing these small stake games, I'm still competitive and I still want to win, right? But I'm losing. I'm like, I said, you know what? Let me study the game. Let me get a little sharper. And, you know, I had access to a lot of like some of the top pros in history, and I reached out a little. I was like, you know, tune me up, boss. And really, and then when Vegas opened back up, that's when my social media started blowing up. And then I was immediately being introduced to some of the highest stakes games on the face of the earth, poker-wise, right? And so I started playing in them because I just love to gamble. I'm a degenerate. The girls that are floating around those games are like, they don't even show in movies at the actual level of some of these games, the environment, the girls, the party, the food, like the whole situation.
Wow.
So I was like, bro, honestly, I would spend $1 million to enter this club. I would spend $2-3 million to be in this club for life. You know what I mean? So when I was losing in the beginning, sometimes I would win, you know, but I was losing more than I was winning. And I was like, you know, this is not becoming that fun because, like, I already bought my lifetime membership in this club. I don't have to keep losing. So I started tuning up quite a bit, and I started recentering. I'm not, to this day, I'm not like filed as a professional poker player. I am a professional gambler and a professional baccarat player and a professional blackjack player.
You file as that? You mean taxes?
Yeah, so my taxes are professional gambler, right?
Wow.
There's a special way I have to file based on that, so I can scrub wins and losses. And there's also different types of write-offs. You know, I have to pay into like the Medicaid and Medicare funds, and there's different ways when I file taxes now. But I'm not like officially a poker pro, right? And in poker, I was not a favorite, but in the casino, I am a favorite to win the baccarat or blackjack.
Right.
So sometimes when it came to like decompartmentalizing my finances and accounting for my gambling funds, right? For me to offset my poker losses, which I guess in the grand scheme are pretty massive, I would have to go to Vegas and try to win it just so I can justify the loss or the continued loss in poker games. But as I started fine-tuning my poker game, as well as playing less, I used to play like every day because it was just dope environments. And I think I was really like star-blinded, you know, like starstruck. You know, I was playing with a lot of celebrities, and I still do, but just this whole environment, for me being from the East Coast, not in that life, was really something.
I could easily sit down and play live poker for like 10 fucking hours in a row because you just want to keep seeing the next hand, and it just keeps like there's no end in sight. That's one thing I like about tournaments is when the tournament's over, it takes fucking forever, but at least there's an end point. I'm lucky, honestly, that I have enough shit going on in my life that like getting home and going to bed at a reasonable hour is pretty much like 100% I have to, because the fucking kid's gonna be smacking me in the face at 5 a.m. and I gotta be at the office at a certain time, etc. But yeah, there's definitely something about it that's easy to just like completely just go for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think my style of just liking to gamble and just like having that itch, right, getting my dick hard, helped me in a lot of ways, because the poker pros who are familiar with playing by a certain structure are now faced with something super unique that usually cannot be bankrolled the way I'm bankrolling it. And they weren't really sure how to address me. And so there was like a turning point where I fine-tuned my game into what is my comfortable style, and some other external factors that really allowed me to now become a favorite in many of the games I play.
There was one hand in particular that I saw where basically I think Andy went all in at the Hustler, and it was a lot of money, and you sat there for a while and thought about it, and then you made this huge call with ace-10 off, and he had jacks. And I mean, it's not like a call that I would really expect almost any poker player to make. And I was really watching, just thinking, I'm like, okay, so is he doing this to set a precedent so that everybody knows at the table that he's willing to make a call that's super, super thin? Because like best case scenario, you're against, sevens, or you're against king queen where you have like a very small advantage, or you don't give a fuck, or were you just like having enough fun with it that like you didn't really give a shit in that moment? Like I was kind of like watching that, trying to like decode like what exactly is his motivation here.
So my motivation on that exact hand, right, was that hand did not happen in the beginning of the game. That hand had happened like quite some way into the game, and I had been watching Andy play this whole time. He was running bad, but in addition, he was really emotional in his play. Andy's a great player. He's a sharp player. He's a poker pro, no question. But whatever had happened that day, he really was allowing his emotions to get the best of him, right? So it became really easy to exploit some of his weaknesses, which the hardest way to exploit a weakness is pre-flop, because there's such limited data to offer you, right? So I was really just having conversation with him. And if you watch like the full clip, you'll see I'm talking to him a lot at the table, which I did with you, for example, when we played, when you had those pocket nines and ended up folding. And I liked my hand, but... and in that table talk, he seemed to open up some other weaknesses where I really was just trying to gauge it. I did ask him if he had pocket aces. If he had pocket aces, I'm drawing dead, and there's no gamble there. I'm just literally, I should just slide the money to him.
And that was an interesting hand to me, too, because I'm so used to seeing Andy be like totally stone-faced when he's bluffing, or just when he's in a big spot in general. And in that one, he's kind of giggling a little bit. He's kind of laughing. I think part of it was probably like he wants to keep you engaged because you're the action player at the table. So like he's maybe going to show a little bit more emotion than he would normally.
I was super keen to that. I was very aware. And I think everything you said is correct. I think he wanted to keep me engaged. I think he also allowed the fact that we're playing on TV, which I know he does, and I've studied a lot of his tapes. I think there were so many factors that I had considered before I even showed up that day about each one of my opponents, that when it came to him, that as soon as I saw that he was playing based on emotion in times that he wasn't, I said, I now have something new against him that he's unaware that I could possibly have against him. So I think with enough due diligence on his style of play and research, that I saw a lot of weaknesses. Now, as long as he didn't have pocket aces, I knew I wasn't drawing dead. I did not put him necessarily on jack specifically, but I knew that I had a live card. And I was anticipating my ace being live. Now, I do have ace 10, which offers me, like inside straight, things like this. But everybody else had folded well early to the straddle I made, right? So most people in a straddle position, if they have ace X, their X does not have to be strong just to see a flop. Because what if they hit that aces up, that two pair, right? So when everybody folded, I just assumed that there were still aces in the deck. Nobody was willing to gamble on my straddle except for Andy and I think one other player initially. Right. So I knew aces were live. I did not put them on it, aces or having an ace, which meant that my ace had a decent chance of hitting on the board at any point. I was exploiting some weakness in his emotion and his table talk. And when I decided he did not have an ace of any kind, I said my ace is strong enough to be in this game. I also, truth be told, it was only like 160 grand. I don't even remember. Honestly, I don't even remember. It was not enough where I had to say to myself, can I can I risk this? Can I afford it? I said, I'm down to gamble. I'm down to have some fun. And I think that I'm not such a dog here.
Right.
So I said, let's do it. Popped the ace in the window, and he was dust.
Gotta respect it.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of people wanted to invite you to the game after seeing that. From my perspective, man, the 4-bet bluff or 5-bet bluff or whatever, all in with ace 10 off, I can really respect, because you have a hand with an ace. You're blocking aces. You're blocking ace king. You have bad playability because it's offsuit. Great hand to shove. Great hand to rep aces with. Calling is kind of tricky because it's like very, very few scenarios where you're a favorite. At best, you're like basically flipping. That would be my read, at least.
Which a flip is not bad. I'll take a flip any day, you know?
Yeah. Especially when there's that much money in the pot, then a flip becomes, you know, and in that situation, which I can't remember at all, it's like, well, did you have 30% equity? Then, because then maybe
I had
it's
like
good to
just
get in.
shy of 40. I think I was at 38 or something pre-flop.
I am actually 38 today. What a motherfucker.
Yeah,
Look
happy
at that.
birthday, man.
God damn. I got to piss super bad.
Me too.
And I know you got some other podcasts coming up, so I guess I'll leave you with some stuff to still talk about on those. I'm not going to like bore everybody with more and more poker talk, but hey, I'm a big fan, recent convert. I don't know, man. You're a fascinating fucking guy. This is going to be a comment section that I'm very excited to read. I'll say that.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me.
How do we title it? The Mikki interview? No, the Mikki what?
I don't know.
You're still working on like the branding. Mikki Muse on Instagram.
Mace.
Mace.
Because I just did the V as an A, like in like V-Lone.
Because you're a goth
ASAP.
kid.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What kind of music you listen to these days?
Mostly hip hop and punk rock. And my hip hop is mostly like darker hip hop.
Necro?
Of course, I like some Necro. That's a throwback, though.
Nice.
But I definitely listen to Necro. I love Puya's music, some Suicide Boys.
Shout out Puya and Suicide Boys.
Yeah, and all that kind of stuff, man. I like a lot of the darker hip hop. Yeah.
Nice. I like dark too.
Yeah. And if you want, off the record real quick, but if you want, I don't know how engaging like all the poker talk is to fans.
They got if they toughed it out towards the 2-hour mark, then because that's what's tight is like knowing that like the casinos are going to be watching this, like the real people who like maybe don't give a fuck about rap, they don't care about poker, but the casino type people want to know about you, and that's the crowd that we're courting with this one possibly.
Okay. If it's up to you for clickbait or whatever, if you want like any other like clout stories or sex stories or party stories, anything like that, I'll give you whatever.
We got plenty.
All right.
Mikki, appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me, dog.
For sure. Okay. No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. Check us out on YouTube, Patreon, OnlyFans. Like, comment, and subscribe. NoJumper.com if you want to support. And look for me and Mikki playing in some private games soon.